that we let us acknowledge we reside in the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish people, who have called this place since time immemorial, and let us honor inherent Aboriginal and treaty rights that have been passed down from generation to generation. I don't believe we have Catherine here today. So I am going to do my best at a roll call with the people I see. So I see, I feel like Mr. Rogers. I see Patty and Liz and David and Paul and Tom and Maureen and Dave Anderson and Emery Shanks and Sharon Abreu and Richard Trout and Jane Fuller and Tony and Kyle and Bob and Olivia and Janet. Am I missing any members of the commission? I mean, we are missing a few, but did I miss anybody who is here?
Annette, Cubby.
What's that?
That was a reference from, I'm way older than the rest of you. That was from the Mickey Mouse Club. When they called roll in the Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha, Bob. Gotcha.
What's the Mickey Mouse Club?
Oh,
wow.
Oh, ouch.
My cousin is furious right now because she was in the second rendition of that. Anyway, okay, so we've done the roll call. Let's go to the minutes. We have minutes from June 30th and July 7th meetings. Let's take them one at a time. We'll do June 30th. Any questions or additions or issues with those minutes? Patty, please.
I noticed when I was reading it, it said that Kevin wasn't there. I don't mean Kevin, Kyle wasn't there, but he must have come later. So maybe that should be put up there because he, you know, he was obviously at the meeting when you read further. So
yeah, I think Kyle was a little bit late. So maybe we add that in, that Kyle joined the meeting.
Yeah.
Any other matters for June 30th? If not, I would accept a motion to adopt the minutes of June 30th.
So move.
Is there a second?
What-
Motion by Paul. Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Dave, you're opposing or abstaining? Abstaining?
Oh, you're muted.
Dave's an abstention. I read your lips all right on that.
And here you're muted.
I actually can read lips most of the time, so he said abstention. So we have one abstention. Okay, the minutes are approved with the change or adopted with the change that was made to add that Kyle joined the meeting. July 7th, any additions or changes to those minutes? Yes, please, Patty.
I couldn't find them. When were they sent? Because I haven't read them.
I do not know.
And
I know, but did others receive the July 7th meeting minutes?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
That's
I'll
why I
find
saw 'em. Okay, any changes or additions to the July 7th? Okay, with that, I would accept a motion to adopt the July 7th meeting minutes. Anybody?
Don't move.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, little delayed. Maybe more of you but should be drinking Bob's espresso.
Root beer.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of adopting the July 7th meeting minutes? Okay, and any opposed? Any abstentions?
Haven't read them.
1, 2, 3, 4. Well, okay, 4 abstentions. Okay, the meeting minutes are adopted. Okay, we're gonna get into our work. Oh, excuse me 1 second. Hey, you can't eat that.
Puppy.
I presume he's talking to his dog.
I need to hire someone to tell me that all the time.
Sorry, I'm on puppy duty and she was eating an antique baby chair.
Oh,
Well, they're
even I
delicious.
wouldn't try that.
I think my great grandpa made it for my grandma, so it's definitely not something she can chew on. Okay, so I'm happily going to turn this over to Jane and Kyle first on the amendments. Oh, I'm sorry, Maureen, you wanted to say something. Please go ahead.
If you don't mind, this will take just a minute. I just would like to give a short, a shout out to the governance committee. Last week, we were trying to get a report out quickly at the end of the meeting, just to get an update on what the recommendations are. And we never got to finish it. We ran out of time, but that committee has worked just as hard as every other committee to do their work. And their entire slate of charter proposals were put into recommendation. So their amendments were put into recommendations. And I just wanted to recognize that because they never complained. They never said anything nasty or anything. So I just wanted to give our chair, Anderson, a little shout out for all that work and his attempt to give that report next week. And I hope that today you'll have a chance to fill it in and give us a heads up on where you sit with it. Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Maureen.
Here.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All your work. Yeah.
Speech.
Okay. Thank you for that, Maureen.
Thank you, Kyle.
We're going to start going through all the amendments and recommendations that we have, and then we'll discuss the ones that we're presenting tomorrow and filing. The term is for filing with the county council and the auditor, and then we will also go over the recommendations that we have that we'll be presenting to the county council tomorrow. That meeting, I had requested in person, but the county council has been told that their first in-person meeting will be July 20th, I think. So this is the last meeting that will be on Microsoft Teams. So I encourage all of you to join, and if we can figure out Teams. I'm going to try and do a PowerPoint on Teams. I've never done that before. But anyway, that'll be tomorrow. And I believe we're scheduled for 9 a.m.
9:15.
9:15, thank you. And so any of you who can be there, it would be great to have you. Hi, yes. So I wanted to start though with the amendments from the Justice and Equity Commission. If you'll remember last week, I'm sorry, Liz, go ahead.
I just want to say for those, if you haven't set up a Teams thing, you can go in just using your phone number. So if it gets complicated, you just default to calling in and not trying to get in on the Teams thing. It does seem to have an additional layer or two to it.
Thanks, Liz. That's good.
Thank you. So last week we had a really thoughtful conversation with regard to the Justice and Equity Commission and the two amendments coming forward from the Justice and Equity Committee. And we decided to take a little bit more time, have some more consult with our prosecutor, but also allow the subcommittee to have more discussion. Yeah, totally. It's happened over the last several days. And so I will turn it over to Kyle and Jane as the co-chairs of that subcommittee to present the findings from the Justice and Equity Subcommittee for us to adopt. And there will be action requested by the full CRC at this point. And then those are proposed to go forward, depending on the vote outcome. Those are proposed to go forward for the first year ballot amendments. And if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna go on mute because she's just happy and making noises.
She wants to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and whoever the pup is there. I'm going to run with this to begin with and just kind of refresh our memory a little bit and then catch us up where we left a little bit kind of unsatisfied last week. And thank you to Kevin, the chair, for that introduction that describes where we are and the work we've been able to do together and with county staff in the meantime. Hopefully everyone has had an opportunity. This rewrite and the most recent draft version for final adoption, hopefully today, came to all of you overnight and reflects all of the changes that we made based on conversations with you and with staff and internally. And so I am, Mr. Chair, are you able to do the allowances from the waiting room? Perfect. So we won't read it unless somebody really needs that to be done, but recall that this, some of the concerns were about, in particular, so two, again, just to review, two in total amendments with one in two parts. the establishment of the non-discrimination clause and all of the language around what qualifies and what fits. Part 2 of that, the focus and the attention around contracting and bidding in the county and how that non-discrimination gets sort of broadcast and shared into the way the county does external business. And then the second one, which we haven't discussed much, which was around the subject of the Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Commission. So what we'd like today is adoption of both of those based on what you have in front of you and what the subcommittee's work represents overall the time. And just mention that we are like many of the committees, we also have recommendations not in amendment form that we're going to continue to work on and hopefully finalize later today. So with that in mind, I just want to reassure everyone, the prosecutor last week made mention that our group should speak with 2 people in particular, Mr. John Kane, who is the Chief Civil Deputy Prosecuting Attorney for the county, and then of course with Mike Thomas, the county manager. And with great fortune, I was able to speak with both of them about contracting and to expand on that and make sure that in our desire, in the committee's desire to make sure that our non-discrimination work was reflected in that moving forward, that we not cripple the county from doing business, particularly in its interaction with public entities. And so the language that's there, I'm going to pull it up in a second. I do have a couple of grammatical changes from the copy that you see, just to make sure that it reads more appropriately. And so at any point here, Jane, if you can share the first one with 2 parts, that'll give you a chance to see it one more time, and then I'll just briefly discuss that part. But you can see that now, instead of one very absolute sentence around contracting, there are 3, and they're sort of gradations of how the county does that outreach in order to secure non-discrimination in its contracting and bidding. So if we can scroll down, can everyone see that for starters? And please help me if there are hands or questions. I see only 6 of you. So this title, just for review, Article 10, this is a new section in the charter on the subject of non-discrimination in the exercise of county powers and performance of its duties. Again, I won't read that unless it's needed, but this looks very similar to what we looked at last week. There are some wording changes. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to read through that part. I want to draw particular attention to part 2. That was what I think generated a lot of our conversation, and maybe the withdrawal of the second for the motion to actually enact all of the, or at least amendment number one last week. So this, and I will read this now reads, and the yellow is, again, just to draw your attention to some contextual and grammatical changes. In the contracting of professional services with any person, firm, organization, corporation, or other non-governmental entity, the county shall adhere to the grounds listed in clause 1. That's different than your copy in that seek is struck and adherence changes to adhere. That is more directly represents what the committee was after in that language. Sentence number 2 used to read the purchase of goods and now reads for the purchase of goods, comma, and those services and goods acquired through cooperative purchasing, comma, the county. So that's the county is added and the commas are added. And apparently in a copy that went out, direct vendors to was not included, but that was meant to be there. So the county should direct vendors to adhere to clause 1 to the maximum extent possible. So number 2 rather, sentence 2 is different than 1 in that 1 is professional services, number 2 is goods, and anything coming to us or needed for the county through the cooperative purchasing program. And if that's new to you, I can certainly explain that. But this is meant to do our best. This is the best efforts part for the county to apply the concepts in clause 1 when they're doing outreach with these parties. And finally, sentence 3, this restriction does not apply to contracts and grant agreements with public entities. So it was brought to our attention doing that background research that, or doing this follow-up with staff that I'll use the example that we talked about the most. The health department, for instance, receives a lot of federal granting. And for us to apply our version of a non-discrimination clause may disqualify the county from some substantial funding in the millions potentially. And so the committee feels comfortable that the clauses of governmental entities, the state and the Fed, are sufficient to protect what we're after on behalf of the citizens of San Juan County. So those are the changes there. I think for conversation, unless Mr. Chair, you want to change this, I'd like to address number 1 first and any questions or conversation about that, and then just review number 2 separately. So if we could stop sharing. Okay, any questions on any of the language or editing from the version that you had, or from the version that came to you last night? I see Paul and then Olivia.
Just a brief question. Has Randy had an opportunity to see your proposed language?
Not this clause specifically as it's written now, but this has gone to Mr. Kane directly as it's written. I should say minus those edits of adding the county and the commas, but the language broken up into 3 parts and stipulated in sort of a grading or gradation has been read and sent to Mr. Kane for review. And I did have a chance to talk to him since our committee met last and redeveloped this language.
Thank you.
Mr. Kane is not speaking for the prosecuting attorney's office.
Randy, please
to
wait.
this matter.
Randy, please wait to be.
Well, I just want to make sure I get this in here before you get and vote on this, Kevin.
Randy, and you can raise your hand and then be called upon and recognized. But for everybody, let's try and keep it cordial and play by the rules. So Kyle, you were chairing at this point. So there was Paul, and I think you said Olivia.
Olivia, Paul, did that answer your question first?
Yes, thank you, Kyle.
Okay, you're welcome. Olivia, please. I don't see you
I
anymore.
actually have the same question just from reading Randy's email. I would like to hear from Randy if that's okay with you, just to see if we can make those changes and have it be okay.
Yeah.
Okay, before we do, any other questions or points on Amendment 1, Parts 1 and 2? I see Tom and then Tony and then David.
I think Sharon had her hand.
I'm sorry. No? Okay.
No, I was just saying I'd like to hear from Randy. That's all.
Tom, please.
Okay, well, I would just like to know nature of the significant problems that exist with our current policies regarding all this. What stimulated this great amount of work and creation of these statements?
Thank you, Tom. Would anyone on the committee like to speak to that?
Jane, you're muted.
Are you muted?
Okay, yeah. I was actually going to defer to you, Kyle, and to Kevin on that question.
Okay, I believe in the work of the committee that, and I think this has come up in previous meetings, this part of the conversation, that we heard from a number of people in the county who do not feel represented in county, less governance, but in county service and in protection and equal access under the law. And I don't have the findings in front of me, but maybe you can refine your question for us or for me, Tom. Do you mean in general under non-discrimination and parties, or in contracting, or?
Well, for this amount of work to have gone into this, which I appreciate all your work, there must be a terrific problem in San Juan County dealing with its employees and its contractors. And I've heard of one incident on Lopez where some BLM signs were knocked down. But help me with this. What's the staggering problem that caused all this work to be done here?
I think one of the other pieces where that we refer to is the fact that in last year in 2020, the resolution 31-2020 brings up a lot of these topics, and hasn't the elements in that resolution haven't been completely enacted upon or acted on. And that, plus the input of people that we've spoken with, is cause for concern that there isn't the degree of representation that maybe certainly that I think of, but there are people who live in our community who represent some of the people listed in clause 1 who have concerns that maybe aren't public, maybe haven't been made in the media or in the circles that certainly that I operate in. And so anything else from Sharon or Kevin or Jane?
I think, Kyle, you just touched upon a key point. I would also say that as a straight white man, it is important for me to recognize my privilege, and also recognize that there are many in our community that don't share that privilege. And they have raised their voice over the last, they've raised their voice for decades, and finally more people are listening. And so what I think this committee tried to do was really listen. And what we heard from members of our community who are not as privileged and who have felt that they are in a minority place and maybe don't have the same opportunities, and maybe have some fears that we don't have, that these two amendments from the subcommittee really begin to get at that. They really begin to put San Juan County government out in front on these issues. And it's not that our current electeds or others within our county aren't thinking about this, but to have it in our charter, in our county's constitution, puts us out in front. And I think it's really important, and frankly, it's about time.
Okay, Tom, any further to your question? I have Tony and David. And
Mr. Chair, Kyle, I think
sorry.
Sharon wanted to make a comment.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Is that okay? Is that appropriate at this time to comment on what we're talking about here?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, just to say that I have a friend in the community who is a person of color, and I talked to her early on in this process, and she's having a really good experience living on Orcas, and I'm so glad to know that, and I'm not surprised, but she also her ears kind of perked up when I said, well, we're going to be looking into what we can add some teeth to in the county regarding justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And she said, if it's going to have some teeth, then I'm interested. That was her comment. And also, we've spoken to people who have given us feedback that there are people in some communities here in the islands that do not feel safe at this point. And, so our question is, what can we do to ensure that everybody feels safe over the next 10 years as we will likely become a somewhat more diverse community? That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair Davis. 2 points on item 2 of Amendment 1, the one that deals with contracting and.
We're not there yet.
Point of order, we were dealing with number 1 first.
That's correct.
Not section 2 of the number 1?
I think that's fair game, the way I presented it, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought May I continue then, Mr.
Please.
Chair? Thank you. On item number 2 of section of amendment 1, the contracting one, the language was changed a bit. I get that. So now there is not a requirement that somebody has to provide, some potential contractor has to provide material beforehand, or is it not needed? And number 2, the word adhere to me means that you have to faithfully comply with item number 1. So if a contract is awarded and the adhere component is not met, what is the cause of action by the county? And third point is, if we are allowing the county, if we're allowing governmental institutions to stick to the state and federal terms of non-discrimination, how can we do something different for non-governmental contract applicants? Can we get away with that? So 3 questions, if you will, and I'll mute myself.
Thank you, Commissioner Gazelle. So I don't appreciate that there's a change in the first part of it. I think if I understood your question or your point correctly, essentially the shall adhere is what's changed are the subgroupings, not that language. So that language still applies to professional service people who apply for grants. So there's essentially 2 types of grants: those that the county has or is looking for contractors to fill particular services. And in that setting, to just be clear, that is a place where we expect, and we're saying the voters will vote on whether or not they agree that the material in clause 1, the non-discrimination language, does apply. And maybe I'm skipping ahead in response to number 3. What is to your question is, what happens to somebody if they are awarded the contract and then are found not to comply is not stipulated in this amendment at this point.
How about the item about treating governmental agencies differently from non-governmental applicants?
I will tell you what I believe out of this conversation, because it is a non-qualifier, or because there is language in government at a government level, whether it's state statute or federal legislation that stipulates non-discrimination in contracting. We feel comfortable that we want to do the best that we can, right, on behalf of number 1. And what we don't want to do, and heard this loud and clear, is cripple the county in its ability to attract funding, critical funding for services. And so in that case, we are in agreement that language would suffice from each of those entities those public entities that we contract with, to get the teeth and to be proactive and prescriptive in the way that we can. We are seeking this capacity with those in places where we offer a contract. It's within the county's right to ask those people applying to rise to a higher standard, and that's what we're saying. So when we have money to offer, sometimes in the hundreds of thousands or in the millions of dollars, it's appropriate that the county, the people of San Juan County and the government expect a higher level of performance. When we are going after someone else's money, there is a level there where we don't want to not be able to qualify for that funding like any other place that's applying. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much.
Okay. David, I have you next.
Yeah, I have a comment about 1 and 2. This is a grammatical comment, and I'm going to just say it, and I don't want to get into a debate about it. If somebody wants to change it, fine. If they don't, but there needs to be a comma after the provision of government services. I pointed it out before. It wasn't changed. I feel it's absolutely necessary, but again, I'm not going to get in a discussion about that. It's not productive. But I think the way it's worded, it doesn't flow. Not only flow, but it doesn't flow, but it doesn't provide the purpose. Doesn't achieve the purpose of this section. With regard to number 2, that first sentence, it looks to me like it was weakened. You had previously, the county shall seek adherence. To me, that means seek adherence of whoever is providing the professional services. You shall seek adherence, but that was changed to the county shall adhere. And I interpret that as meaning that the county itself shall adhere, but doesn't require anything of whoever is providing the professional service. So it seems to me that this has been substantially weakened, unless I misunderstand. I don't have the wording of the new language in front of me, but I know the old wording said the county shall seek adherence. That means seek adherence of that other third party. What is the wording again of the new draft? I believe it says the county shall adhere, which is different.
It is. I appreciate that point, David. So what we were after, and so I made some. I wrote what you're looking at over after our meeting yesterday, and I think I miscategorized or misqualified what the whole committee believes, and that is that shall seek adherence is not as, it wasn't meant to just kind of eliminate that piece of it and only reflect on the county. It is meant to be the county's job to insist on, or the county shall, and maybe the language in the original version. I appreciate you bringing that up, but it wasn't meant to weaken it and only make the county. In fact, it's not about the county. This is a place where the county is doing external work. So that's my error. It should say something like the county shall insist on, or the county shall require adherence, as opposed to seek, because it's thought that seek isn't insisting or isn't guaranteeing that the entity applying to contract adheres to it solidly. So
are you going to modify again then that sentence?
I think in order to follow what we were after, we would need to. And so the county shall ensure adherence as opposed to seek.
That'd be fine by me. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That's a valid point. Any other piece from you, sir? Okay, Bob.
This is primarily in response to what Tom had said earlier. Basically, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of thing. What has been going wrong? Well, in the first place, I didn't think there was anything wrong until I started paying closer attention to what's happening in all of the islands regarding these matters. And just looking at my own little home island of Lopez, we had and it wasn't just someone taking down some signs. It was a person in a piece of large machinery, like a backhoe, running over the signs and then running at people. I wasn't there, so this is just a report that I've heard. And then running at people with the piece of machinery. There's obviously a lot of anger there. Another thing that happened here on this island, and I found out about this from reading the sheriff's log, is there were some rainbow flags, the LGBTQ flags, kind of, that people display out front to indicate their individual pride. Some of those things were taken down and stolen and gone off to parts unknown. In addition to that, do you really have to have the problems sticking right there in your nose? When I moved here 7 years ago, one of the first things I noticed as I drove along the road was signs indicating where the tsunami evacuation route was. And so I asked people who were The new neighbors, lots of tsunamis here, huh? Wow. Got to know where that evacuation route is. No, there hadn't been a tsunami in anyone's memory, and yet you take the precaution, even though the problem has not presented itself directly, because the seriousness of the problem when it does. That is why you have rules like this that are proactive ahead of time, and that's why we need them here. That's all.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. Okay, I see your hand, David. I'm just going to ask anyone else who wants to speak first pass. Jane.
Thank you, Chair Davies. I just wanted to say that we've been making multiple presentations as a subcommittee on justice and equity for the last 3 months, and sharing with you the findings of our work, putting it up, posting it publicly to the website. I've made 2 presentations of our work on behalf of the subcommittee that were PowerPoint presentations. And so we have been over this ground again and again and again in the last few months to share with the full commission what we have researched and what we have found. And so I think that it's well placed to be putting these both amendments forward to indeed enable this county to live the resolution that the county council adopted last year. That's resolution 31/2020. And the core values stated in that resolution are very profound. And what both of these amendments are trying to do is to enable the county to adhere to those core values in everything it does, and that includes contracting to the extent that it can be done so in a prudent manner that doesn't financially implicate the county in a negative way. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fuller. Henry, I believe I saw your hand.
Right. Commissioner, will you accept a motion to accept this amendment?
I will accept that motion.
Second.
We have a second with Commissioner Lafferty and a number of you for discussion. A few of you wanted to hear from the prosecuting attorney. So the stage is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Kyle Davies. And I did speak and met with the subcommittee yesterday for about an hour and a half. We had an engaging conversation. I probably spoke for about at least a third of that amount of time, and I'm not going to spend 30 minutes with you here today. I did provide you with written advice on July 7th, and you have that written advice with regard to these. That advice is unchanged today. As to the suggestion from Commissioner O'Connell that there will be some kind of police power ability to handle circumstances where people steal flags or use a backhoe inappropriately, this is not that kind of rule whatsoever. There's no police power regulation the way this is written, and it will not be operating in that fashion. We have other rules. Those people involved in where they're known, particularly the backhoe incident, have been charged with crimes, and the laws exist on the books to handle those things. With respect to the issue on subsection 1, first let me address the conversation with Deputy Prosecuting Attorney John Kane, who is the lead attorney in our office handling contracts, and I appreciate that you spoke with him. However, he is not the advisor to the Charter Review Commission. He was just expressing concerns or advising on practical matters with respect to this, and he has provided no advice on the matter that is currently under consideration by the commission. I have, and that's part of my advice, and I adhere to the advice on the 7th of July. We ask that you reject that second provision. And the contracting clause, and I'll explain why. First, with respect to subsection 1, I must mention and remind you that subsection 1 is not just a parroting of state and federal classifications for non-discrimination. There are anywhere from 4 or 5 additional classifications that are added here, and that is the concern. Now, that's okay with respect to the operation of the county. But when you attempt to spread that to others, which is clear what you are attempting to do, Kyle Davies, Commissioner Davies has said it, Commissioner Ranker has said it. We're trying to extend our non-discrimination rules and apply a higher standard to others. That is against the rules of the Charter Review Commission. You are to act only with respect to local matters. And in contracting, we contract with people outside of the county. We contract with multinational corporations and others. And what you're trying to do is impress the policies of this county on those corporations, on those businesses and so on. These are sometimes very essential contracts. Sometimes there's only one person who is doing that kind of work. And we're tied to them at this point in time. We can't get them to change their contract. And we predict that. Then yesterday during this discussion, Commissioner Ranker said he had confirmed that that might in fact be the case with respect to people he have confirmed this with. So that is not a legitimate basis for your action, trying to raise a higher standard to others outside the county. It's outside the scope of your work. And for that reason, I recommend against paragraph 2. I think paragraph 2 is even made more difficult by the way that you've proposed to change it here. It's very hard for me to provide advice on something that I've not been provided a copy of. So let the record reflect that no paper record has been provided to me or by email of the document that's under consideration right now. But what I saw on the screen no longer provides for a procedural process for compliance and instead is a strict substantive process, which means that every contract that we go through will have to insist upon this clause. And if it's rejected, the contract will be rejected. The question was raised by Commissioner Gazelle as to what does that mean if we later learn that a contract that's accepted is that there's some disregard for that clause. What it means is that if we know about it in advance, then it would be contrary to the oath of office of those people who are responsible for that contract. And if we don't know about it in advance, then it's a basis for default under a contract. And I'm not sure what the damages would be, but at least it would be a grounds for default and some sort of action. That's a high risk for those of us who are elected officials. We all take an oath of office, just as you have, and we intend to comply with state law, as well as federal law, as well as the charter. So that said, we recommended the approach used in Snohomish County, which is simply to comply. It's not simply, but this all came about at the outset when there was a mention that there's no anti-discrimination, non-discrimination clause in the charter. And so we proposed one to you, the same clause that's used in Snohomish County, which adopts the state and federal rules and also has an exception. The exception is not reasonably related to the accomplishment of a legitimate public purpose. In other words, exceptions to the rule can be made when there's a legitimate public purpose. And I gave an example to the committee yesterday with respect to the action at the health department of hiring a person to give advice and guidance to people, young mothers who are breastfeeding, and how that was desired to use some classification and perhaps some gender-based discrimination in the hiring process. So that's a legitimate government purpose in doing that. And there will always be some legitimate government, there may be some legitimate government purposes from time to time. So that exception is appropriate. The Snohomish County approach is solid. And they also have adopted through the commissioners some contracting provisions. Why is it more appropriate to adopt contracting provisions through the commissioners than through the charter? Because the commissioners can amend them more easily in order to make sure that when you have sole source contracts and so on, that those things can occur. It may be as much as a change of an ordinance, but patience will prevail. The fact that this is not local in nature is fatal to it. The fact that it's financially unsound is it's bad judgment on your part, and so I suggest you reject the second paragraph.
Okay, thank you, Prosecutor Gaylord, for your comments and insight. I just want to provide for the record that it was our last CRC meeting was your suggestion to pursue both Mr. Kane and Manager Thomas, which is where we went for some of this, reply and feedback and follow up. So, Commissioner Lafferty, I see your hand.
I had a question for you, Mr. Gaylord. Maybe I misunderstood, but one of your last sentences was, why is it better for the commissioners to put this forward, process it, versus the CRC? Did you mean the council members? Or did I misunderstand your point?
Yes, you have to remember I became a
Yeah.
prosecuting attorney in the days of the Board of County Commissioners, and I'm
Okay.
often known to lapse into the commissioner standard. Yes.
Okay,
So I meant the
okay.
county council.
I got. And then my other point was just simply, I think what Kyle Davies was pointing to is that they went to those people on your suggestion, that you urged them and us as a commission to hear from those people specifically. So it didn't make sense that you were then kind of undermining the information they got from them. So I take what they said as critical information to help us make a decision.
That's right. And these changes are just made on the fly here at the last minute. John Kane sent me something at 9 o'clock this morning. It's different than what is presented for you. He has not seen this new information. In addition, I told you that he's not the legal advisor to the commission. And so he was not attempting to give legal advice about the lawfulness of this. He was only looking at this from a practical standpoint as the county's contracting lawyer.
Okay. I understand that clarification.
Thank you.
Okay, Kevin, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple points. One, to that last point, I just wanted to underscore that in the last conversation with the prosecutor, we were told by the prosecutor, I'm not the expert on this. I would recommend you speak to John Kane in my office and the county manager, because they're the experts on this. That's what Kyle Davies, as one of the co-chairs of the subcommittee, did and came up with this language. The second point is the prosecutor is still on our full listserv, and this was sent out to everybody, I believe yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. And so everybody on the listserv received that. I think there were the minor changes that Kyle pointed out in the beginning of his presentation, but we are in crunch time. So now let me get to my point, which is, the prosecutor referenced something I said in our committee yesterday, and I think it was taken out of context. So let me explain exactly what I shared, which was that I had a conversation with a friend of mine who is chief counsel for a very large tech company out of Washington State. And I asked them specifically, because when after Kyle spoke with John McCain, I've done that a bunch, with John Kane, Kyle and I had a conversation, and Kyle was saying, they've raised this point, which I think is really important, which is there are large firms, and this is what the prosecutor was speaking to. There are large firms where we have contracts, like for instance, Microsoft. If all of our employees are using Microsoft products, it is very difficult for us to do something where we would be in jeopardy of our future Microsoft contract if they're the only ones, particularly in some cases, who are providing many of these services. Another one would be, and I'm not sure, maybe we're on T-Mobile, but if most county employees who were required to have a phone have a T-Mobile account, if we did something that jeopardized the way we would be able to secure those contracts with them and those products from them, that would be very difficult. So, Anne-Marie, can you mute? Thanks. And so the conversation I had with this friend of mine, I said, tell me about this. And he joked and said, actually, I think our rules are probably more progressive than you're proposing already. So for us, it wouldn't be a big deal. But what he did say is for other companies, it may be. And he said, I think the point is well made. we then had a conversation, however, about the fact that there's a difference, and this is what Kyle was touching on, that there was the conversation that Randy's deputy raised, which was there's a difference between us going out for goods, think in terms of a computer contract or a cell phone contract or something, and us requiring something for professional services, which is who does the road project, who does a bridge project. And those are exclusively from the research I've done, those are local. So those are our decision. We get to decide who we're hiring entirely to do that. And we have multiple bids coming in. When I was a commissioner and a councilman, I never had a project like that where we didn't have multiple bids. So that is the separation that I feel is very important. And I would say that in my conversation with the gentleman at the company I spoke to, the language that Kyle and Jane, but Kyle really worked on this section, has put together would appease or address any of the issues that they had.
Commissioner Fuller, I know you wanted to speak. Commissioner Gazelle, did you want to respond to that?
I'm sorry, Chair Davis, you're allowing me to speak?
Please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not, I am really, I don't know how to take what Commissioner Ranker just said. So we are advocating our local ditch digger company to be required to have more stringent stuff than the larger companies such as Microsoft or T-Mobile. Is that what I'm understanding? The optics of that will not see the light of day, in my view, in this community, if that's exactly what we're saying. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
I think San Juan County is trying to be bold and be out in front on this. The other thing I've done is I've spoken to county officials in several other counties in Washington State and elsewhere, and some state leaders, and we are not the only ones having this discussion. The other conversation I had is that the EU is actually gone further in this direction. So some of those larger companies are already starting to comply. I would look at your question differently, Tony. What I would say is, like I said, that larger company is already going further because other jurisdictions are forcing them to, or because they actually have a social license to operate and they've chosen to do so. And so other states, if we were Los Angeles County, we would have the ability to go to a T-Mobile or somebody and say, hey, we're thinking of this, you better come along. As San Juan County, we don't. Where we do have the ability to push and be bold and make sure that everybody we're giving millions of dollars in contracts to is respectful of the justice and equity issues that we're talking about, is where we make our local choices. The larger corporations are already moving in that direction.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ranker. Chair Davis, if I may say a couple of words on that. I get the need for strong language. I'm just concerned that this strong language is above and beyond what is really required in a small county such as ours, where our local contractors who depend on some of the multi-million dollars that you mentioned, Mr. Ranker, that depend on that income to survive, are going to be held to a stricter standard than larger companies are going to be held to. Is that what I'm understanding? And I'm not going to go back and forth on that, Mr. Ranker. I'm just saying that as a statement, that it's really unfair for our local contractors. I get the need to have strong language, but the second paragraph, or excuse me, the second item goes beyond that. It's fair to say that we want our county council members, when they are working with contracts, to make sure that Section 1 is followed. Item number 2, not amendment number 2, but item number 2 is probably not necessary in the charter language. That could be something that the council and the prosecuting attorney and other organizations in the county that are directed to lead the county could enforce such things. But why is it supposed to be in the charter?
Okay, Thank you, Commissioner Gazelle. I have two hands. Commissioner Ranker, if you wanted to respond, and I think Commissioner Fuller
Hey,
did
Jake.
as well.
Commissioner Fuller should go first. She's been
Okay.
waiting.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify for all of you that our prosecuting attorney suggested that it was his office that provided us with the Snohomish non-discrimination clause as the one that we would work off of. It was actually our subcommittee that did the research on the non-discrimination clauses of every single county charter in this state. We reviewed those, and actually the language that we've come up with is very similar to that of King County, and it does pertain to contracts. And that information was provided to the prosecuting attorney's office. It was made clear the direction we were going. And excuse me?
I think there's a feedback. I don't think that was a.
Okay. So my point is, and in response to you, Commissioner Gazelle, if you look at, and I tried to paste it in the chat, but the text is too long, the non-discrimination clause in the county, in King County's, or it's called an anti-discrimination clause. It's section 840. And that was the clause that we originally based our draft off of. And we also looked at other clauses in other county charters, the exception of which was Whatcom, because Whatcom, as I've explained to all of you before, Whatcom doesn't have a non-discrimination or anti-discrimination clause. It's the only one of 7 apart from us that does not. And the reason we do not is because we mirrored our charter off of Whatcom County's charter. And so our subcommittee looked at all of these clauses in the 5 other county charters, and we developed this amendment on that basis. And so, Commissioner Gazelle, to your point, in the King County anti-discrimination clause, section 840, you will see almost every single identity factor that we've identified, and you will also see that it pertains to contracts. And additionally, I would like to say that if you read Resolution 30/2020, it actually speaks to almost every single one of these identity factors that have been included in clause 1 of this section on non-discrimination. So that's just for a little bit of clarification there. And we did have a very productive discussion with the prosecuting attorney yesterday that enlightened us further and gave us much more to think about in terms of this particular clause too. And I sent to all of you last night these 2 final versions of these 2 amendments. They went to the SJC, our San Juan County Charter Review Commission email list, which I believe the prosecuting attorney is on. He is on that list. So it is my understanding that he would have received that email that you all received last night at, I don't know what time I sent it. I'm sorry, it was too late. I can't recall. Stayed up till 2 a.m. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fuller. Commissioner Abreu, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, thanks. Also, just to say, we did have a really excellent meeting with Randy yesterday. We, I think, got a lot of clarity on both sides, and we actually did consider making the second clause into a recommendation. But after we had further discussion on it, our understanding, I think, Randy, I think we understood that really the concern was about, we didn't want to be putting the county in a position of not being able to get federal grants. There was a difference between purchasing and professional services. So we had that separated out in the clause when we updated it yesterday. So, that was our understanding at that point, that we separated those things to make it very clear that there's a difference between how we're approaching professional services, purchasing, and then any sort of public grants.
Thank you, Commissioner Abreu. We're still in the discussion part. I do want to say I would request of everyone to keep in mind, much of this conversation is economic in nature, and certainly it's important to make sure that the county is able to do its essential business and to not miss out on critical funding or critical opportunities that help the county function and not burden the taxpayers and the citizens by extension because we put the county in a fix. But I'll say I'd ask Commissioner Gazelle and others to think about, not all of these are external. In fact, most of these in professional services do impact our other citizens who are employees, who are family members of people who live and work here, and who have expressed to us that they have challenges. And I think clause 1, while it might be more broad in the populations that it identifies, we all know people who are represented there who should have the same opportunity that we do. And that's simply the extension that we're looking for in that arrangement, that everyone has equal access, whether you're a business owning contractor or an employee who works for them, or frankly, an employee of the county. And so that is from where these amendments and the language comes. And that's the piece that we hold so important. So that said, any other input for conversation before the vote? Okay, it was moved, I think, for the time. The motion should be repeated for the group and for the record.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I had to step away for the puppy one another time. I'm sorry. I just had one clarification. Could you also, I was going to say repeat the motion, but could you also clarify the differences that you made in the edits that you made between what was sent out last night by Commissioner Fuller and what you're proposing right now? I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, are you asking me to point that out?
Yeah, if you could, please. I think that would be good, just so that we're clear on what those changes. You discussed it in detail at the beginning of this presentation, and thank you. But I thought, based on the back and forth we just had, that I thought it would be good if you just clarified what those changes were. And I think there was an amendment to it already from that Commissioner Dellendorf raised.
Okay, I think probably best if you, Commissioner Fuller, if you can share screen again. Did you have a comment first?
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'll share this screen. And before I do, just to be clear, the highlighting in yellow that you will see in a moment that you saw a few minutes before are the only changes that were made since you received the file, the Word document last night, which the prosecuting attorney also received. It. The clause is essentially not changed. So I'm just going to put it up on the screen, and Kyle can explain to you once again the yellow highlighting, which is a minor modification to what went out last night to everybody. So with that. Okay, sorry, I just need to share. And this is what we're talking about.
Thank you. So there are two parts. One that we discussed second, which we did on the fly, but primarily from the version that you were sent last night, we added phrase segments and punctuation to make a sentence more clear and more direct. So your version said under the longer yellow, the purchase of goods and those services and goods acquired through cooperative purchasing should direct vendors to adhere to clause 1 to the maximum extent possible. Added then, just to make more clear, for the purchase of goods, comma, and then to separate goods and services and goods through the cooperative purchasing program or approach. And then added the county, specifically that wasn't there. So the county should direct. So in both cases, it's the county that should direct vendors. And so, Commissioner Dellendorf's comment, the county should direct is what actually we were looking for in number 1 or sentence 1 also. And so to change the his friendly amendment or his advice then to change the county shall, and it's not here, but do you have the shall ensure adherence was the change to the change. So, and that is shall seek adherence and shall ensure adherence are different than what that structural change is the only difference with what Mr. John Kane saw. And conversed with me about yesterday. And Commissioner Fuller.
Yeah, I just also wanted to clarify then that this was the clause with these minor changes. This was the clause that, for the most part, that went to everybody last night. This is the one that, yeah, that's all I'll say.
Mr. Chair, does that address your
Yeah,
your
yeah,
clarification?
I just thought it would be good for us to see that again before the vote. So thank you for that.
I call the question.
So you need
Okay, the question has been called, and
so first you ask if a third of the people support the call to the question.
I'm going to turn the meeting back over to you for the vote, Mr. Chair.
All right. So the question has been called. Do a third of the people support the call to the question?
No.
I think we're there anyway. So even if the motion fails, I think we're finished with discussion. So
I'm going to repeat the motion, right?
yeah.
The motion is to accept. The motion is to accept this language on non-discrimination in the exercise of county powers and performance of duties.
Okay. And who was the second originally? Sorry.
Liz.
Liz was. Okay. So second, is there any?
That includes the modification that we just discussed.
That's right. That's right. And so David, I will allow you, but I do think a third of the people, somebody needs to mute. So I think that was you actually, David. So can you speak and then also have?
Yeah, I was away for a few minutes. Are we voting on both 1 and 2? I don't know what the result was of discussion about 2, but are we voting on both of them?
Yeah, it's to accept the recommendations from the subcommittee.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, though, just for David's clarification, we're voting on amendment number 1 related to non-discrimination. We are not voting yet on the second amendment related to the Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Commission, in case that there was any confusion around that.
Thank you, Commissioner Fuller. Okay, so folks are clear on that. Okay, so all those in favor, please raise your hand. I'm going to write these down. So I have Olivia, Bob, Dave, Dick, Sharon, David, and Marie. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Jane.
Janet has her hand up.
Liz, I saw that. Janet. Then Patty. Kyle. Now, before I go to abstentions or opposed, I just want to repeat these and make sure I didn't miss anybody. I have Olivia, Bob, Dave, Dick, Sharon, David, Anne Marie, Jane, Liz, Janet, Kevin, Patty, Kyle. Did I miss anybody who voted in favor?
Maureen.
Maureen. Okay. All those opposed? I have Tony, Tom, and Paul. Any others? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. All right, I will turn it back to Kyle and Jane for the second piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of you for your attention this afternoon. So number 2, then amendment number 2 proposed by the committee for approval with the full CRC is, and while I read the title to it, if Commissioner Fuller, you would put this one up on the screen. This is San Juan County Charter Review Commission proposition number to be assigned concerning the subject of the Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Commission. Also sent to you overnight with essentially a page and about a fifth of information. And this is a summary of the proposed commission to address, and I will read this part just to, it's most easily summarized. In its native language, there is hereby established a Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Commission, which shall provide advice and support to and collaborate with the county government, elected and appointed officials, and county employees on matters concerning justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So the rest, hopefully you have read, but this is an advice and support and collaboration effort. This is meant to include representatives from all branches of government and be a venue where best practice can be discussed and where membership from the county and also, and maybe most importantly, community representation can coalesce and evaluate the extent to which the county in its operation is transparent and engaging citizens and making sure that issues of non-discrimination and justice, equity, and inclusion are forefront. So again, this is the commission development. So 11 people in summary, and some from each branch of government. And then this includes, and hopefully you were able to consume this. This talks about who we would like to be represented, a little bit about their term, but in essence, left to the county council to appoint membership of the commission. A change from the version that you saw that's important in some of the same sort of focus as amendment number 1. What we intended for the language is the change in yellow and to strike where it falls before. So to be very specific, it will, in our mind, it is the chair of the commission, whoever that is, and there's guidance about who that should be, who we intend that to be. It is the chair's option or a selection of a designee to also sit on the county's Law and Justice Council. So, so what it should read for that final one is the chair of the commission or their designee shall be a resident who is not a county employee and serve on the county's Law and Justice Council. So actually that's, I'm not sure if you can reflect it in your copy, Jane, but I think we intended to have it and the sentence end there. In their own capacity was part of the other phrase.
Oh, sorry.
The county council shall appoint the member of the commission. So discussion about the amendment number 2 from J&E concerning the formulation of a Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Commission. I'll leave I think we should leave the share screen for conversation, and I just will get your help to identify. I see Bob, I see your hand, but I'm not sure if you were first.
I don't have to be first.
I'll call upon Bob to comment.
At the end, the last thing that you showed us, I have read that sentence and I'm afraid I'm just being a dim bulb, but I have no idea what it means.
Me too. That was
no idea at all.
The one that's on the screen right now, that last sentence.
That's it. Not the last sentence. The penultimate.
The second to last one.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So in our mind, so the county has a standing Law and Justice Council, which exists already. And Commissioner Fuller can speak to that in just a second. It's our recommendation for this amendment that the chair of this commission, which is different than the Law and Justice Council, become a member of that Law and Justice Council or sit on that council also. But it stipulates that it not necessarily be that individual, it be them or a designee. Commissioner Fuller, would you like to comment? Clarify.
Am I muted or can you hear me?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. All right, yeah, just to refresh everyone's memory, you may recall that we actually voted as a majority members on our commission when we were deliberating over amendments, and one of our amendments was, no, sorry, actually it wasn't ever an amendment, that's right. We deliberated over the issue of the fact that the Law and Justice Council did not have any representation from, a county resident, someone who resided in the county but didn't actually work as a county employee. And so this was, I'm going back some time now. I'm going back to approximately, it was April and May when we discussed with all of you that based on the research that we had done, the discussions that we've had, including my having a meeting with Lindsay Callahan, another lawyer in the prosecuting attorney's office who chairs this Law and Justice Council. I spoke with her. I spoke with, anyway, I spoke with a number of people about this Law and Justice Council, its purpose, its scope, its mandate, and the extent to which it was a body that on which residents could sit or did sit, or what its purpose was generally. And what was realized through the different interviews and meetings that were conducted was that it would be prudent to have some representation from a resident in the county to sit on that Law and Justice Council and be a part of the deliberations of that council only if, or insofar as they were able, because there are matters that this body deals with that are security matters. So the connection to the commission we're proposing as an amendment would be that one member of this commission sit on that council so that there could be an interplay between the work that the commission is doing. It can be shared with this Law and Justice Council, which is currently the membership of that council, which is mandated by state law, currently consists of representation of all three branches of government. So it includes representation from the judges' offices, from the prosecuting attorney's office, from the sheriff's office, and from county council and the administration, I believe. So the idea was to create a connection between this commission that will have likely more residents on it who are not county employees, with this other body that is very much the county's body, if you will, and enable them to talk to each other, share, data or trends or issues, concerns. So I hope that clarifies a little bit. The idea that Commissioner Davies was just speaking to was that the designee issue here is, it may be that there is another member of the commission, assuming it is, let's assume it gets to the ballot and is approved by a majority of the electorate, that the designee might be someone on this commission who perhaps is better placed than the chair themselves to represent on the council. So it just gives some flexibility there. That's what we were driving for.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a second question. And that question would be, have you resolved with the prosecuting attorney the matter of advising judges specifically, as they are members of the judicial branch, advising them on their conduct and performance when that may not be appropriate? Has that been resolved with the prosecuting attorney?
Yes, and actually, I'm going to ask Commissioner Ranker if he would like to speak to this one. I'm happy to speak to it as well, but I can't see him. So if Commissioner Ranker, oh, yes, because in short answer, Commissioner O'Connell, yes, we did discuss this at length with the prosecuting attorney. And Commissioner Ranker, would you like to speak to that point?
You're maybe better at leading it. I'm happy to chime in. I mean,
okay,
why don't you go ahead and I can chime in.
Okay. So yes, I mean, there's no question that, and you are all made aware as well of the prosecuting attorney's advice on this issue with regard to there needing to be a separation of powers that's clearly respected, and so we understood very well, what he was getting at there, and so and that was very helpful for him to be able to go over that again with us yesterday. So what we are talking about, if I can scroll, I will scroll down here and speak to this point here. The commission shall have representation from each branch of the county government, executive, legislative, and judicial. There was something of a perhaps a bit of a misunderstanding that we were driving to have the judges sit on this body, and that's not what was ever our intent. And so there was a misunderstanding there. The idea was that there be, again, this would be a person who works for one of the judges who could sit and provide comment or what have you that might be of value to the commission's deliberations, it would not be a matter of the commission advising a judge or advising the judge's office of what to do. It would be an opportunity to share, again, experiences and best practice. And so the purpose and intent of this commission is not to violate the that separation of powers and advise judges on how to conduct their business, how to perform their mandates. That is just not the intent of this commission, and it never was.
Commissioner Fuller, that really wasn't what I was trying to address. I was trying to address the first part of it that you've now scrolled to, where the commission gives advice, support, and collaborates with members of all of the branches. Maybe that's not there. I thought that it was.
Well, I mean, judges are elected, so yes, I mean, it's still there. If you see the text, it says elected and appointed officials. It is talking about advice, and this is where I would like Commissioner Ranker to speak up on this point.
Yeah, sorry, anyway. So 2 points. Bob, we went round and round on this. We actually had some really thoughtful conversations. The key point is that this is an advisory commission, okay? Unlike the C&E commission that had more teeth, this body is truly advisory. And I believe, Bob, you actually raised in one of our former meetings that the idea of we would never be telling a judge or a prosecutor who they can, hang on, sorry. We would never be telling a judge or a prosecutor the way we envision this is that they would not be advising them on individual cases or individual decisions on who they're going to prosecute or how they're going to prosecute or a judge's decision. It would be higher level. It would be metadata. It would be looking at, hey, here's the ideas on how we can make our county be better with regard to JEDI issues of justice and equity and inclusion. And judges and the prosecutor and others need to be part of that conversation. This is not, however, going in and questioning individual decisions or I'd stop there and say decisions.
Okay, again, I don't see the whole table, but I see Commissioner Garcia's hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to, my first question was the same thing that Bob had, because I was totally forgetting that the county has a Law and Justice Council already. I thought this was basically forming that. And now I see that what we're doing is making something better than what was required. We're doing basically that, only we're adding the community to it. We're adding non-county employees to something that sort of already exists. So that was my confusion. I forgot the county even had it.
Okay, Commissioner Garcia, thank you.
Commissioner Davies?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to elaborate on that. Yeah, thanks, Patty. And yeah, it was some time ago we were talking about that. And we haven't had a chance to bring back to you our recommendation on having some member of a resident of the community beyond that Law and Justice Council. But just to be really clear, the mandate of that Law and Justice Council is extremely different from what this body is being, what the purpose of this body is intended to be. And so it's outlined in state law. All counties are required to have a Law and Justice Council. And the reason the state introduced that requirement was because there was seen to be the need for the different branches of government that deal with issues of justice to have better coordination and collaboration in fulfilling their respective roles. So the purpose of this commission is quite different in form and substance than the purpose of that council. So that is the reason for suggesting that if this commission is struck, that there be representation from this commission that will be more attuned to issues being experienced by residents of the county with regard to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And also Resolution 31/2020 is not something that falls squarely at all in the mandate of that Justice and Law and Justice Council. It's not like that Law and Justice Council is responsible for implementing that resolution. That's not the case at all. But they can, and they are beginning to start talking more about some of the core values of that resolution, which is a very positive thing. And they're starting to do that actually as a result of the work of our subcommittee going back to February.
Thank you, Commissioner Fuller. I did see Commissioner C, your hand, and then yours, David.
I didn't have my hand up.
I've had my hand up. I think you're not seeing me, Kyle.
Okay,
It's
I'm sorry.
Sharon.
And we
Okay.
look alike, so that's, you
No,
know.
that wasn't it. Go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah, because Commissioner Brownell is having connectivity problems, she posted in the chat, and I'm going to read what she posted. She said, I think you need to say, quote, a designee from the commission, unquote. Otherwise, it sounds like the designee could be anyone.
Yeah, I think that's an appropriate point, and I noted that. Thank you, Sharon.
That is helpful. I will say that was not the intent of that line, to have it be open. Commissioner Dellendorf, please.
Yeah, with regard to that same sentence, I'm not sure what the term "in their own capacity" means. I think it could be deleted and it wouldn't change anything, but I'm lost to know what that means, in their own capacity. The other observation I think, I know Jane and Kevin said this wasn't the intent to do this, it wasn't the intent to do that, but I know that's the case, I agree, but the wording may be different. The wording may confuse things or not, or conflict with the intent. Particularly, I'm looking at the very third line, first sentence, where it talks about providing advice and support on matters. To me, the word matters could be construed, could be interpreted by the public to mean something like on matters, meaning there's a case before the courts. That's a matter, a case before a court. And we want to go to this, people might think, well, we can go to this commission and we can get them to look into this matter, namely a certain case, which they feel like is important and is not being given proper consideration. So I think that term matters should be changed to something like concerning on policies concerning justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, on laws concerning, but not matters, which is too broad. It could be interpreted to be some specific case that really wasn't the intent of this commission to get involved with. So that's my comment and request, that we reconsider that word and maybe replace it with something else. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dellendorf. That's appreciated, that change. And I don't personally have any issue with that. It is more clarifying, and that's what we're after. Any other, before we stop screen share, is there anyone who wanted to comment based on what's posted? Because I think for the conversation from here forward, we be able to see the whole commission. I will look through the hands here. Your hand is still up. David, did you mean to say more?
No.
Okay.
District Attorney Gaylord's hand is up.
And Kyle, I would also say that we need to move toward action on this at some point. I'm also past due on public comment, so I need to move to public comment, but I'd like to finish this and move to the action on that. So just letting you know, we've got a timeliness with some other agenda items as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll call upon the PA and we'll go from there.
I'll be brief. I wanted to address the question from Commissioner O'Connell with respect to the inclusion of the judicial branch. It is my advice, my written advice to you, to exclude the judicial branch under the guidelines of Article 11, Section 4 of the Washington Constitution, and also under the separation of power doctrines, and to do so in a way that's similar to the language in Article 4, Article 11, Section 4, where you just simply say except for the Superior Court and District Court judges. The language that you have now includes the Superior Court judge. The language you have now includes the District Court judge and includes advising them. And that's just not correct. The judges have the power to create their own advisory bodies on the subjects covered here. You can recommend that to them, But the legislative branch or you acting and proposing to the public as a legislative matter cannot direct that the judicial branch do something like this. It's unlawful. Lastly, at the bottom of the page, you show that membership should include members of the judicial branch, but you say, well, not the judges themselves. Look, you have the commissioners making the appointments, and the judges operate like the prosecuting attorney does, with people who they are responsible for and who report to them. They are the eyes, ears, and people who work for those judges. They have the same capacity. So if they're part of the judicial branch, doesn't matter whether the title is judge, assistant, or juvenile court administrator. They're all part of the judicial branch.
Okay, thank you, Prosecutor Gaylord. I was understanding one approach and then not. So I believe I heard you say, with the exception of district court judge and superior court judge, that would initially, I thought you were saying that would be an appropriate change, but by extension, you would say that no personnel whatsoever in the judicial branch. Is that what you're saying?
So there are two places I would make a change. One is in the second line or third line, I would accept the judicial branch, and on the so where you say elected and appointed officials, I would accept the judicial branch, accept those that are part of the judicial branch, and then down at the bottom where you have the reference to the judicial branch as part of the branches of government that are appointed from each branch of the county government, I would just say from the executive and legislative branch.
Okay, thank you for that input. Commissioner O'Connell. You're muted, sir.
I would like to move the amendment of this amendment up at the top. If we could go up there, I would like to put have that read. Well, we're not up there, so could we get up at the top? You're right. After elected and appointed officials, comma, if we could put accepting the judges at those two levels. And that's all. That's the only place I would move that we would change anything here. And that's really based as much on the judicial, the judicial ethics that the judges have to perform under, and that is really important. I'm not wholly on board with the entire judicial branch not being addressable by this commission.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner O'Connell. Is that a motion then?
It is.
Okay. So moved that the Commission, Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Commission be approved with the modification that elected and appointed officials, with the exception of district court judge and superior court judge.
Yes.
Is that okay?
That's it.
And the rest as follows.
Yes.
A
second from the chair. Any other discussion? And if we could stop the screen share, I could see everyone. Thank you.
And actually, even though we're operating in a subcommittee, it'd be better if I didn't second that. So if somebody else wants to second, I'll remove my second.
Commissioner Garcia, I see your hand. Second from Patty. Okay, any further discussion?
Yeah.
Commissioner Dellendorf, please.
What about Bob? What about this, the other reference to the judicial branch down at the bottom of the first page that Randy addressed?
That is not included. That is not included.
No.
Would you change that also, or would you leave it as is?
I would leave it as is. That is not included in my motion. I'm only including the judges, as I'm not totally in sync regarding the rest of the judicial branch that is not covered by the ethical concerns of the judges.
Okay, any further discussion by show of hands? I would also accept by show of hands from anyone who does not understand the motion as proposed. Okay, seeing none, based on the motion to accept as modified the Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Commission, all in favor by show of hands. And Mr. Chair, are you able to
Yeah, and I'm going to write them down.
roll call?
Yeah, so I have Kyle, myself, Jane, Bob, Patty, Liz, Maureen, Dave, Anne-Marie, Sharon, Olivia, Dick,
Chloe,
David, Chloe, yeah, sorry. David Dellendorf, did you vote yes or not?
I abstain.
Okay, well, I'll get to that. Sorry, I thought I saw your hand and I wasn't sure. And then Janet Barnell, I think you were a yes. Okay. So Janet. Okay. So I have Kyle, Kevin, Jane, Bob, Patty, Liz, Maureen, Dave, Anne Marie, Sharon, Olivia, Dick, and Janet. Am I missing anybody? Okay, all those opposed. I have Paul, Tom, and Tony. Okay, abstentions. David Dellendorf. Okay. Motion carries.
Okay, to conclude then, thank you very, very much to the committee doing the work and exploring this topic with our citizens, and a note of gratitude to county staff who've supported us along the way, including those who've attended our meetings. Thank you to you, Mr. Prosecutor Gaylord, for your time yesterday and along the way. I appreciate everyone's support here, and I turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, I want to go right into public comment because we're behind on what was advertised. So for members of the public, if anybody would like to speak, now is the opportunity. Please, if you're able, turn on your video and unmute yourself, and then please address us and any issues or questions that you may have and that we can address. Although I should not say it that way. We will not be getting into a back and forth during this period, but if you do have questions, we will attempt to get back to you as soon as we can. So, any members of the public? Any members of the public? Okay, I am not seeing any, so I will close public comment at this time, and we will move back into our conversation regarding final review of amendments. And I want to go through, and these should have been sent to you, and Megan is on the call. She will be updating this language that was changed in the last bit of time here. But under our current
Someone by the name of Renee has her hand up.
oh, I'm sorry. I did not see that. Renee, would you like to speak? Renee, did you have something to say at this time?
She's
Yes.
muted.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can. Please go ahead.
So I really love the Salish people, but I'm wondering why you guys are starting out with an acknowledgement claiming that, it sounds like you're claiming that we are occupying their land, and that maybe we're established here unjustly, or is it just I don't know. I was just wondering if you could clarify why you're starting out with that declaration.
Okay, thank you for that. So again, we don't really get into a back and forth on that during public comment. It's an opportunity for you to raise subject matter. Since I don't see anybody else from the public who cares to comment, if the commission is okay, I would be happy to respond to that quickly. there has been a growing recognition across the United States, frankly, and in Canada and in Mexico, recognizing that we are not the first peoples of these lands, and that these lands were taken by force across the country. And so that acknowledgement is recognizing that these are not our lands, that and recognizing and giving honor to the first people whose lands these were. And on Orcas Island, that is the Lummi tribe, the Swinomish, the Tulalip, many others had villages and were the people of these lands. And so we want to recognize those ancestral homes and honor them for that. I hope that addresses the point you're making there.
Well,
Again, Renee, I'm sorry, we're not going to really get into a back and forth. It's just not appropriate during public comment. If you have another comment, I would absolutely say go ahead and make it. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that Commissioner Fuller and Commissioner Davies, who were the subcommittee chairs, I don't want to put them on the spot, but I know that they've been happy to speak to others offline as well. So I would hope that they would be willing to have a conversation with you, and I will put myself out there that I would be willing to give you more detail on kind of how we came to that acknowledgement. But I will also say that acknowledgement is one that was developed partially by our own county employees sometime back, recognizing the points that I was just making. So Renee, did you have another comment you wanted to make?
Well, it just seems like it's a precursor to possibly forfeiture of our private property, but maybe that's just me. I like respecting them, and I like honoring the treaties and the contracts that we have with them. And I have Native American blood in my genes also, but it just seems like you're starting a precursor to forfeiture of private property. So just be careful. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else from the public who would like to speak? Okay, so with that, we will close public comment and we will move on to the final review of amendments, continuing this discussion. So I want to go over where we are, and this is by vote. We've already agreed on this. Now with these changes, we will be supplementing previous discussion items, and I'll explain what that means in just a moment. The motion that we're under from a meeting sometime back was that we are in fact going to do 2 batches of ballots. We have a total of 8 amendments, and then somebody help me. I don't have the list of recommendations in front of me. I have the amendments in front of me, but Megan also just sent out the updated every single language except for now the changes we just made to the Law and Justice, but the rest of them were sent out to you to the listserv in the beginning of this meeting. So everybody has those as well. We're not going to get into the language on each of those because they've already been adopted by the commission. What I want to go into is the proposals that I, and if others want to join, will be filing with the county council tomorrow at 9:15 a.m. formally. The proposal on the table that again has already been voted upon. So if we're going to change from this, we will need a person who voted in the affirmative to ask for reconsideration of the vote. And right now we have that for the first batch of ballots, the climate and environment proposal, initiative and referendum proposal, the term limit proposal, the justice and equity, the 2 pieces that we just voted upon, and the what we're calling broadly the introduction, which is the acknowledgement, the co-salish acknowledgement, the values statement, and the updated preamble. So those 5 are currently on the 2021 ballot. What is proposed for the 2022 ballot, and these also still need some work as well. Those 5 that I just listed are now complete. For 2022, we have the CRC budget and procedures. So we did a number of things to fix our own procedures. That one, the ranked choice voting, and the public advocate. There was a back and forth from the public advocate. Just today, there was some more conversation on that. Several of you have asked kind of what will be some of the questions and work that's taking place. I think that's one where we can have some more discussion, as well as ranked choice voting. Some questions have come up there as well. So right now, we have those 5 proposals moving forward for 2021 that we would file tomorrow. And we have 3 that would be moving forward under 2022. So that is the plan at this point. I will go to Commissioner Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, you may recall that we received information from the prosecuting attorney that the 2 amendments from Law and Justice, from Justice and Equity that came out of that subcommittee, they are actually 2 amendments. They're not 1. They wouldn't be considered 1 amendment. That's my understanding. So counting the number you just counted off, if the non-discrimination section as an amendment and the Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Commission as another amendment are 2 separate amendments, then that's 6 that would be going on the ballot for 2021.
Okay. Other comments? And Randy, or he may just be off my screen. Is the prosecutor still here?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So Randy, at some point I may circle back and just ask just on that justice and equity question too, because I do remember that email from you, but let's go to other commissioners at this point. So I saw Anne Marie and then I saw David.
So I just wanted confirmation that the initiative and referendum items are all three of those are 1 ballot measure.
That's correct.
Yes. And I just want to confirm that with
that's been
attorney.
Yeah, so that was already commented on a couple meetings back.
Right. I just wanted to make sure we weren't going to have anything at the last minute come up on us.
That we haven't heard anything on that. So that one was vetted but I do remember that the prosecutor's office got back to us on justice and equity and said there may be a question of whether or not that can be won. David.
Can I just go down the list that was sent to us to make sure the list that was sent to us by Megan or whoever it was? We have the C&E Commission, that's just 1. The non-discrimination, that's 1. The Equity and Inclusion Commission, that's 1. Initiatives and referendums.
David, I'm actually writing down your list next to mine. So if you could just do it a little bit slower. So non-discrimination and then the J&E Commission.
Yeah, the non-discrimination would be number 2. I'm going to number them if you don't mind for my purposes.
The same order as my numbers. So you go ahead and number whatever you want.
Okay. Initiatives and referendums. There's 3 items, but it's really just 1 amendment, correct?
Yeah, the initiative and referendum is 1 amendment.
1 amendment. Okay, but it's got 3 items, but for our purposes, it's 1 amendment. Okay, and then we got term limits.
That's right.
And that, again, this is on the first batch.
Mhm.
Then we have the CR. No, that's okay. That's it. That's it. And then the
introduction.
The intro, which has 3 parts, but it's 1 amendment.
That's
okay.
right. So now, as Commissioner Fuller pointed out, this could potentially be 6 instead of 5 if justice and equity has to be split. So are there other commissioners that have to comment, or can we ask the prosecutor to comment on justice and equity? Liz, please go ahead, and then we'll go to Randy.
Well, I had a question about, we were working hard to have this at 5. So I wanted to hear from the prosecutor before my comment.
Okay, please. So Randy, could you comment on, it was some time back, you sent an email about justice and equity and you believe now, and originally you were thinking maybe it could be, but you didn't have the final language. And when you saw the final language, and tell me if I'm not paraphrasing this correctly, when you saw the final language, you said, actually, I believe these might have to be 2 separate amendments.
Okay, let's talk about it. 2 things. First, justice and equity. Commissioner Shanks also raised a question about initiative and referendum, and we made a recommendation for a change. I haven't heard a motion to accept that a change, and that was essential to keeping it as a single measure.
So let's circle back to that if we can. And can we do justice and equity first, and then we can come?
Justice and equity, I've proposed split up as two propositions, and that's the way they've been discussed today, because they are interrelated as suggested. The commission is not interrelated to the non-discrimination clause. The non-discrimination clause easily stands on its own as a separate measure. And so I understand it includes part 1 and part 2. Those two are related to each other. And so part 1 and part 2 can stay together as a single measure, but it's independent from the commission and the scope and duties of the commission. And so the commission should be a separate measure. And that's the way we've been discussing it since last week. I believe that you should adhere to that. With respect to initiative and referendum.
Randy, can I'm gonna allow you to speak to initiative and referendum as well. I just want to let us finish on justice and equity. So let me see based on that. So Liz, you said you wanted to hear from the prosecutor. Did you have a comment now? And Randy, you can keep your camera on. We're gonna have a little back and forth here anyway. So, but Liz?
Yeah, so if I understand prosecution, we are separating those two, which means we're at 6. And we had worked really hard to try and keep it at 5. So I just wanted to have a conversation about people's thoughts on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So do folks have comments on that? Folks have thoughts? Patty and Dave.
I don't really see much difference in having 5 or 6 when we're really talking about the same thing. It will still require as much homework from the people vetting these amendments as if it were one amendment with 3 pieces, or, you know. So I guess I don't have a problem with it being 6, just because it's the same things we're talking about looking at. That's my take.
Okay, thank you. I have Dave and then Liz again.
Patty, I'm sorry, real quick. Patty, were you talking about justice and equity, or are you talking about initiatives and referendum?
Dave,
okay.
Okay. Yeah, we're speaking in generally, Dave, the question was, from Liz was, how do commissioners feel about 5 versus 6 amendments if justice and equity are in fact going to be 2?
Right. I think 5 versus 6 spills over to something. I have a question for Randy, and you mentioned that he's going to get a chance to talk about the right initiatives, whether that's going to be 1 or 3. And I want to make sure that he says that can be 3. So in terms of 5 versus 6, I would like to make sure that we ensure that is a part of that discussion. Thank you.
We're at 6 and not 8.
Yeah, right.
So are others okay if we combine the conversation then and allow the prosecutor to jump in on the initiative and referendum point?
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
hang on. Jane, did you have something?
Just a quick question on, and if this is not the right time to ask this question about the those that would go on the ballot in 2022, are you going to let us know which ones are on the ballot in 2022, or did you already? Because
I just said that. So again, the now 6 that we would have for 2021 that was decided upon before, but now we're getting into a little bit different place because there's some changes here. Is 1 was climate and environment, 2 was initiative and referendum, and that was all 3 of those pieces. And the prosecutor did tell us in a previous meeting that those could be 1. He has a clarification though that he's raised that I believe is saying could question that. So we'll get into that in a moment. But climate, environment, initiative and referendum, term limits, justice and equity, non-discrimination, justice and equity commission, and the introduction. So that would be 6 for 2021. For 2022, we're proposing the CRC budget and procedures, RCV, ranked choice voting, and the public advocate. All of those, the budget and procedures is nearly complete. Ranked choice voting and advocate still need some work. So
thank you. Thank you for that.
Right now. So then I have Liz.
I just wanted to be clear that just because my comment came on the tail end of talking about justice and equity, I'm not in favor of splitting those two or pushing either one of those over to the 2022. It was more about having a conversation. Is there anything else? And do we need to find something else that we would push over to 2022?
Yeah, and that's the conversation we can get into after we hear from Randy on initiative.
Right. But yeah, I just want to be sure that I was not implying we should push any part of the justice and equity over to 2022.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to clarify, and Randy, please tell me when if I'm incorrect on this, but the matter of whether or not it is 1 versus 2 amendments or 1 versus 3 amendments, that's not up to us. That is there are laws that define that, and our prosecutor is going to look at them and say, look, when I write the ballot titles for these, I'm going to need to write 2 ballot titles instead of 1. So while there are areas where we can go back and forth with our attorney and choose to not take his advice in some areas, I don't believe this is one of those. And I just wanted to throw that out there. And Randy, please tell me if I'm wrong on how that part works. But my understanding is this is pretty black and white.
I've been giving you advice to whether or not to separate into 1 or more multiple propositions at the last step. And that, all of that advice was received by you on or before the last meeting, July 7th. And when I separated an item into a separate proposition, I did so on the basis that it was necessary to do that because it failed to meet my test as I went through it, that the matter involves a single subject under the county's single subject rule. So I gave you a memorandum on that. You've been pretty good at breaking these up into separate propositions, and so they have been presented to you in that way. I also gave you a memorandum with respect to initiative and referendum in form of an email, and the need there was the fact that the proposed amendment regarding paid signature gathering was to be applied to all measures. And all San Juan County ballot measures, which may include a variety of propositions and petitions that are requested in connection with annexations, for example, of fire districts or any other, a whole broad variety of ballot measures. And that's beyond just initiative and referendum, the topic that is covered by the proposition. So you would need to remove the paid signature gathering item as a separate item unless you limited it to initiative and referendum. I received an email subsequently from Commissioner Garcia, who indicated she would make a motion in connection with that, but I have not heard that motion made or any alteration of the language that was presented to me. So I had suggested language in my comments to that. And also there was a question about the use of the word who and who the paid, who is paying the signature gatherers. And the first time I read the language that you used, I read that the signature signer was going to pay the signature gatherer some money, money paid to the signature gatherer. And they said, no, Randy, you're reading it wrong, but there might be another word choice there. Again, you might choose to wordsmith that a little bit. If you look at my the proposition as formatted by our office and presented to you about July 2nd or whatever it was, you'll see that those comments and it's just in the lower part there concerning paid signature gatherers.
Thank you very much. Patty, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to respond because I didn't realize I had any more work to do on that after I sent you the clarification of what I thought the language was. I just thought maybe you had misunderstood what we were trying to do. I think we did put initiative and referendum in there, but you're right, it probably hasn't been re-voted on or something with that language. I just thought it was handled and done. I didn't realize there was any more to do, so I apologize.
I understand. I think a motion's needed to replace the word ballot measures with initiative and referendum.
Right, okay. Because I just went ahead and did it without bringing it back to the full commission. So I agree with that. Initiatives and referendums, not ballot measure.
Okay, so we're going to need to clear up that language too, but I see Bob's hand.
I have a difficult motion to make, which is that the initiative and referendum matters be moved to the 22 ballot. And it's got nothing to do with the quality of the work or anything like that, or the subject matter. It has to do with the crowded dockets.
Bob, before there's a second on that, well, I need to ask if there's a second, and then I'm going to ask you to withdraw your motion, but go ahead.
Oh,
Is there a second on that motion?
don't need to withdraw it.
Not seeing a second, the motion fails. The only reason, Bob, I actually think that's the discussion we want to have next is, do we want to move some of these around?
Okay,
But
all right.
I just wanted to finish with the prosecutor, and Randy, thank you for that, has pointed out something that was sent to us a while ago. And Patty, thank you also. I believe I saw something where you would acknowledge, yeah, we're going to fix that. And that does need to come back to the full commission, because what was voted upon is the previous language. So did somebody have that language handy?
Must have it somewhere.
Liz, I see your
Commissioner
hand.
Ranker, while Patty's looking for that, I don't know if I spaced or just didn't understand. So is the initiative and referendum 1, 2, or 3 items at this point?
What the prosecutor has said is that it will be one,
Okay.
but that
We
there's,
get the language cleaned
yeah,
up.
but we need a correction in there, because that
Okay.
could also separate things that could then confuse that question as well.
Okay, then I did understand. Perfect,
So,
thank you.
Commissioner Shanks?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I wanted to make sure I understood what Randy was saying. So let's say there's a ballot measure or initiative at the statewide level that's going to be running in San Juan County, and they're going to have paid signature gatherers here. Would they come under, if we make that a change that you suggested, would they come under these same rules, or would it only relate to San Juan County initiatives and referendums?
Great
I'm
question.
not sure if Randy's still there.
Randy, would you like to comment on that?
Did I make sense in what I just said?
Yeah.
Yes, the way it's drafted,
Uh-huh.
the words used are petition signatures for San Juan County ballot measures. And what I'm recommending it be for San Juan County initiatives and referendum.
Yeah.
And if that's what's intended, it can stay in this section. If something else is intended, it has to be a standalone section,
Okay,
standalone proposition.
Okay, so if it related to statewide initiatives that were going to be paid signature gatherers
This
in
is just
San
a
Juan
county.
County, it would have to be a separate item.
Yes, and I'm uncertain whether or not that's even appropriate or lawful. I would think perhaps the state controls whether paid signatures need to do that on state measures. And this would not be a local measure limited, to which you are limited to.
Right, and I was asking that because we took a lot of this from King County. So I would look to see what King County did with their statewide gatherers as well. Patty, you may know.
Yeah.
Patty, and then Dave.
I'm valiantly trying to look at something that I could screen share, but it was to change ballot measures to initiative and referendum. And I know that I sent that in an email off to Megan and Kevin and a few people after Randy had talked to me. So I've got it somewhere. It just never went back to the full commission. And the point on having these, this was really only intended for county measures and not for the state.
Yeah, and also to that point, I actually spent a lot of time looking at state initiative and referendum laws on 2 different bills that I did. And I think Randy I actually would have the same question Randy has on whether or not the county has the authority to do that.
Yeah.
So Dave, and then I have a request of Randy.
Can I make a motion that we adopt that language that Randy suggested here?
Second.
Okay, so you have a motion and a second. What I was asking for is, Randy, do you by chance have that in front of you?
Yeah, I do.
Is it on a different computer?
I work on 2 different computers. I can't screen share.
Oh, good. Tony got it.
Tony has it right there. That's it,
Yay.
Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Tony.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Thank you, Tony.
Tony, scroll down if you will, please. Tony,
And
if you
we're
scroll
doing-
down, this language is at the very bottom.
Yeah, all the way.
keep going. It's right here in section 6.80, paid signature
Right,
gathering.
right there.
Comment A1. Right?
Right.
The ballot
Ballot
measures is identified, and the suggestion is to substitute for the word ballot measures, the words initiatives or referendums.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and thank you, Tony. I think it's really important when we're doing something like this, that's changing specific words, we try and have it in front of us. So thank you very much, Tony. So we have a motion and a second I want to clarify, is the motion to then move this version forward? We have another version that's already been moved. So it would be to move this full version forward with that change.
Yes, that is the motion.
Okay. Okay, and there was a second, I believe, from Paul.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so any further discussion, Patty?
Yeah, I had made one more change, and that was to put a comma before the word to identify that, you know, it would be a little more clear that we
Where are
were
you?
paying people.
Where are you?
So
I don't see the word.
where the to is highlighted, if you put a comma after paid.
Yes, this is to address the
This is
comment
comma
in
after
A2. And the comma is a good suggestion.
Okay, so we're gonna, so did the maker of the motion and the second accept that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to change ballot measures to initiative and referendums, and then add a comma after the word to in the second
Oh,
line.
before the word to.
Sorry, before the word to in section, in the second line of section 6.80. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Okay, all those, can we stop screen share, Tony? Thanks a lot for that, Tony. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Tom, are you opposed? No. Yes? No. Okay, any opposed? Let me do that again. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries.
Wow.
Wonderful.
Nice,
Unanimously.
Patty, nice.
Okay, great. And Randy, it is your understanding then that with those changes, particularly, that can still stay as one amendment and one proposition going forward?
Randy.
Yes, they all concern initiative and referendum. They're, although they're all in the same title, and although they're different sections and actually to deal with discrete topics, they are interrelated. And so, yes, they can stay as one proposition as proposed. in the
Wonderful.
Materials we submitted.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, now if we can move forward, right now, currently then, we would have 6 for 2021 and 3 for 2022. I will repeat them again, and then we can get into discussion of where we are with those. So it's Climate and Environment Commission, the initiative and referendum we just discussed, term limits, the Justice and Equity Non-Discrimination Clause, and Justice Equity Commission, and then the 3-part introduction, which includes the Coast Salish Acknowledgement, the Values Statement, and the Preamble. So, and then for 2022, we have the CRC Budget and Procedures, our internal process, the Ranked Choice Voting, and the Public Advocate. We have a number of recommendations, and Megan is just saying that check your emails for the lists. Thank you, Megan. We have a number of recommendations coming forward as well, but I'd like to take those separately as they are not as time sensitive. We need to file the amendments that are going to the ballot as quickly as, well, hopefully for the 2021, we're filing them with the County Council tomorrow morning at 9:15. So let's open that up for discussion. Where are folks at? So Tony, I'll get to you second if I can. Bob had commented earlier. So Bob, you had a motion. I would like to ask of folks, and I don't get to control this as chair, so I'm just throwing it out there. If we can just have a bit of a discussion before we move things, just to get a sense of where people are. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah, I will, for that purpose, I'll withdraw my motion for the time being.
Yeah.
Not
okay.
there.
Okay, great. So, Tony and then Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So let me understand this. We have 5, possibly 6 amendments that are going to be presented to the council tomorrow by you, the chair of this committee. Is that correct?
Currently, it would be 6, just to clarify. Yeah, under the previous motions that have carried by majority of the commission, we have 6 and 3.
Okay, I'd like to propose a motion if I may.
Okay, well,
Discussion.
all right.
The motion is that I move that our Charter Review Commission job will be done tomorrow after you present the amendment recommendations to the County Council pursuant to sections 9.32 and section 9.2 item E. I think this talk of having, this is my motion.
I understand.
Second.
Okay, hang on. I've got a pen not working. So I'm sorry, Tom, was that you on second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Under discussion, please. Anne Marie.
A point of order, this was previously voted on, so doesn't someone who previously supported having 2 sessions or 2021 and 2022 have to be the ones that make the motion? And I don't believe either of these parties are people that supported it.
Guys, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
With all due respect, that's a different motion. This motion is that our job is ended. We're not debating if we have 2 sets of ballots or 2 sets of recommendations to the council. This is one motion, which is to end our job as of tomorrow when these ballot suggestions are presented to the council.
I don't think that's truthful.
No.
So let's just have discussion. We're now, we will look at the rules on this, but anyway, I'm gonna allow conversation under this motion and then we can finalize that. Wow. So I've got, hang on, I want to write down your names. I've got Bob, and then I had Liz, I think. Was that right? No. Liz, Bob, and then Maureen, and then Jane, and then Dick, and then David.
You got Sharon.
Sharon has her hands up.
Sharon had her hand up.
Okay, it's gonna be
Sharon.
I got it. You guys chill, please. I've got Bob, Maureen, Sharon, Dick, Jane, David. Bob, please.
If we are going to, hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
If we are to consider this motion honestly and the matter honestly and in a straightforward fashion, these are the same thing. And having 2 sets of ballot measures in 21 and 22 and ending with the first one, they have exactly the same results. You got the same guy in a different raincoat. So let's not go down there. We've already, I think the chair needs to rule that that this matter is already being considered and voted upon.
I've actually got my cliff notes on the side and I'm trying to read them while I'm listening to you guys. So go ahead with more discussion. I have Maureen, and then Sharon, and then Dick, and then Jane, and then David.
And Tom.
If we end tomorrow, we lose a public advocate, and that's a really important one to me. And I think it's an important one to the citizens. It's the simplest darned amendment we have. I think. Anyway, I don't want to lose it. And if we end tomorrow, that goes. So I have a problem with all of that. And I'm not sure. I don't really love the idea of doing 2 years. I don't love it at all.
Neither.
I can't see how we managed, to do too many. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Okay, we're gonna go to Jane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm confused if all we're presenting tomorrow in the way of amendments is the 6 amendments that would be going on the 2021 ballot, and we don't present to the county council the ones that would go on the 22 ballot. So could you please clarify what will be presented tomorrow? Because if the motion that's on the table is being seriously considered, how can we cease our work if we're not even presenting all our work? So I'm confused.
So Tony, I can answer it. And sorry, I'm just going to be very candid on this. The motion is a motion trying to get around the previous motion. All right. So, and
No,
not
true.
so the motion by default would disallow us from submitting anything in 2022. Because if our work is done, we're done. We're not submitting anything else. So the motion by default would stop the other motion from happening, which goes to Commissioner O'Connell's point, which is that this is right. And I'm literally, and two sets of rule books here, and I'm looking at it, this is in a gray area. So the chair would have discretion on to rule on this. What this motion would do is by default supersede the previous motion that's on the table that we're going to 2 years. That was decided upon by a supermajority of this commission, actually. And so typically what you would do is you would say that a person who voted in favor of the previous motion on the affirmative would have to ask for reconsideration of that motion. This, however, is a different motion. And so what Commissioner Gazelle is saying is that he doesn't believe he needs to have somebody in favor ask for reconsideration, because his motion would be saying, no, I'm not saying anything about 1 versus 2 ballots. I'm saying our work is concluded by tomorrow, which by default supersedes the previous motion. I'm getting very close to ruling on this. I think I just convinced myself.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yeah. Well, actually, no, Tony, no. I'm going to allow everybody to speak on this, and then I'll put you on the line.
All right.
So I have Sharon, and then Dick, and then Dave, and then Tom, and then Tony.
Yeah, thank you. Just to say, I've been working hard on an amendment for the 2022 ballot, and I would really like to see it through. I've been working very hard with climate and environment and with justice and equity, and I'm close to being finished with RCV, but I need a little more time. Thank you.
Dick?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I just think the motion is completely disingenuous. It's a distinction without a difference.
Mr. Chair.
No, Tony, hang on. I'm going to get
Point of order, Mr. Chair. It's irresponsible to have somebody say things like that in a public meeting. It's a point of order. You got to hear me. Thank you.
Dick, did you have any further comments?
No, it's just, I mean, that's my reaction to that, Tony. It's just trying to do an end around, in my opinion. Okay, in my opinion, it's disingenuous.
So both Tony and Dick, let's try not to impugn other members.
Okay.
That is one of our rules. And I will say that Commissioner Grau, you're right on the edge of that. So,
all right.
David, please.
I agree with what everybody else has said about this. We've already decided this issue. But can I ask Tony a question? If you're not trying to stop the second batch from being voted on in 2022, if you're not trying to stop the recommendations from also being presented to the county council, what is the reason you are presenting this motion in the first place? What is I know what the motion is, we know what the effect is, but what is the justification for this?
So Commissioner Goodell, do you yield to a question?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Commissioner Dillendorf. I suggested some time ago that we present everything to the county council tomorrow. And with the idea that some items were completely done for this November's election and some items need more work to do. Commissioner O'Connell at the time said we were all done at the time. This was in one of the May meetings. And I said, okay, fine, we're all done. But then here we are, a month later, we're still working on things and we're still not done. So my recommendation is still to move forward with all items to the commission, to the council tomorrow. Number two, we are following a charter. We are following rules. And our charter specifically says that we are done when we present to the county council items that will go on our next November election. There's no way around that.
No.
It's actually not. Well, okay, finish.
That's what it says. I'm reading it, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, it says the word final.
Before on section 932, it talks about that the council, when they get our recommendations, they move it forward to the CRC may propose amendments to the county to the charter by filing such proposed amendments with the county council, who shall submit the amendment to the voters at the next November general election at least 90 days after the filing and registration of the amendments. Section 920, item E, the term of office shall be the shorter of 1 year or when final recommendations are submitted to the legislative body, county council, for referral to the voters.
Yeah, final.
Bingo. That's the clause.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Tom.
Well, Tony just read the law, and I was curious as to when my term as a commissioner ends. And it's pretty clear to me in reading that it ends when the recommendations are submitted. In our attempt at redefining that we're going to have more recommendations is probably a matter for the court.
Okay, thank you. And Tony, I had you on the list again. Have you made your comment?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Others care to comment? Sharon.
It just seems strange to me that this is coming up the night before Kevin is presenting the first batch of amendments to the county council, because we've talked about this many times over many months. And I just don't understand why there is not a universal understanding of those discussions that we've had really over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
This is really not all that complicated. Our terms are over on December 31st of this year, or when we submit our final recommendations. If we have 9 things that we're working on and 6 of them are ready, no one in their right mind is going to say that those 6 are our final recommendations. We got 3 more recommendations to go, and we give them to the county council sometime after the November election. Okay, or at least 3, and then if we give them to them before December 31st, we're done. Or we can wait till December 31st. We can see in the meantime if something else arises that we want to address. But we are not done until we tell them these are our final recommendations, which I trust we will studiously avoid doing tomorrow.
Kevin, can I interrupt?
Yeah, please.
I'm sorry, I have to leave. And Tony, I apologize. I should have simply limited my comment to saying it was a distinction without a difference, in my opinion. But I have to leave. I'm sorry.
Dick, before you leave, do we want to go ahead and allow the question?
Sure.
So is
Yeah.
there any further discussion?
Anne Marie's had her hand up.
Anne Marie.
I would say if there's some commissioners who don't feel that they can fill out their term until the end of the year, then they should feel free to step down.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, are you saying that you are not going to rule on this and you're going to allow the question to be voted upon?
If I were to rule, I think I would rule against it, and then there'd be challenges. And I'm inclined to just say let the
I got you.
motion go. It is in a gray area. So, but I'd like to do it before we lose more commissioners, so that we actually have more commissioners be able to participate in this, because it's a very important question. We've already lost one tonight. Jane.
Mr. Chair, I had just one simple comment, and that is there was a suggestion by Commissioner Gazelle that we're finished our work. And we've now heard from others who are working on the 3 amendments, 2 of the 3 amendments where the work is not finished.
That's
and
correct.
we saw evidence of this that was sent to us by exchange of email between the prosecutors. So we're not done our work. That's simply my point.
Yeah.
If there are no other speakers, I call the question.
Yeah. So you don't need to call the question, because I'm going to call the question.
Okay.
So I don't think there's any more discussion. So the motion on the table is that we are concluding our work tomorrow after I do my presentation. All those in favor? I see 2. I see Tony and I see Tom. Any others? Okay, all those opposed? Okay, I'm going to write them down. I have me, Dave, Paul.
No, I didn't vote.
Patty. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Paul. Paul, Patty, Maureen, Liz.
Doing the Vulcan.
No.
Got a Vulcan look here.
I can't do that.
Live long and you know what.
David. Okay, I have myself, Dave, Patty, Maureen, Liz, Bob, Dick, Jane, David, Kyle. Did I miss anybody? Anne,
Anne Marie.
Anne Marie.
okay. And
I'm
then,
sorry, how many is that opposed? One opposed?
let me finish the vote. So any abstentions? Abstentions, I have Paul and I have Olivia. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The motion carried, or the motion fails. Sorry. So, okay, so
How
now
many were opposed? I'm sorry, I need to get the number.
we have 11.
11 opposed.
2 abstentions and 2 in favor. So the motion fails. So currently we have, back to the list, and we have that tomorrow I will be presenting 6 to the county council. Thank you, Mylene. That's already understood, but thank you. So right now, I will be presenting Climate and Environment Commission, Initiative and Referendum, Term Limits, Justice and Equity, Non-Discrimination Clause, and Justice Equity Commission, and the intro of the Coast Salish Acknowledgement, the value statement, and the preamble. Where are folks with that? Folks okay with us doing 6?
Mhm. Yeah,
Maureen C., you have a
Should-
hand up. And
I
then
do. My question is, should you tell them 3 more are coming?
I'm
Will you tell them?
So I'm not going to tell them 3 more. What I'm going to say, and we have 1 council member here, and thank you very much, Councilmember Wolf, for sitting in. Very much appreciated. What I will say is that this is our first batch of amendments being put forward for opposition. And they
That's
should
good.
expect a second batch as soon as we can conclude our business on those, and that will be forthcoming. And then I will go over these 6. So, and the other thing is that they will receive the actual amendment language from us that's been vetted and so on, back and forth, that has been sent to each of you today from Megan, that final language with the changes that were just done in Justice and Equity. Those may not be in your email yet, but we approved those this evening. And the change in initiative and referendum too. So they will receive that language, and then I will verbally go over those. And then I will tell them that they should expect additional propositions from us as soon as we conclude our work on those. And then we will also hopefully be able to present the recommendations tomorrow. And I do not have that list in front of me right now. Liz, hand.
Kevin, did you call for a vote on the 6 versus 5 in this first batch? Because some of you convinced me early on, it didn't matter to me if we had 6 or 8. Some of you convinced me that it would matter and that it weakens the possibility of initiatives, amendments passing.
So
We have too many.
there was not a motion on the table, Commissioner Lafferty. What I was saying is, I was raising that question. I said, right now we've got 6. Here they are. Where are people with that? And so a bunch of people just had their thumbs up. I think what I was going to do is ask for a motion to clarify eventually, but I was just allowing some discussion here as well.
Okay.
So are there other comments though on the 6 that we have before us? I see Bob and then Patty.
I'm not going to renew my motion unless you all tell me that it makes some sense to do that, to cut it down to 5 in that way. Because, well, I'm just not going to do it. I need to know that there's some support there. And there was not a second for my motion originally.
I think there wasn't a second at that point in time because we wanted further discussion.
Oh, I see. Okay.
On the initiative and referendum.
In that case, I renew my motion. I renew my motion that initiative and referendum be put on the second year.
Is there a second? Jane, is that a second?
That's a second.
Okay, so under discussion, Patty?
I was, 2 things. I was just going to say that I don't think 6 is too many in my mind. I don't think the magic number of 5 will make a big difference. And, oh yeah, as far as recommendations, do they have to be presented tomorrow or can we wait and present recommendations later?
Yeah, so technically they do not. technically our amendments don't need to be presented tomorrow. We just have to have them in, but I think tomorrow is a deadline that we've given ourselves, which is appropriate. Because
we
the
wanna
county
do it.
council and the
Yeah.
we have a lot of work to do.
That's good.
So the recommendations could come later, particularly since it is clear that we will be continuing to work. The other thing that has to happen in the very near term is the entire document is being rewritten. So a master, this is our charter, is being prepared by Megan. That will not be done by tomorrow. If it were, I think she would, beat me up or something if I asked her to try and accomplish that. So I think that there will be work forthcoming, and I was planning on speaking to that. So Patty, actually, thank you for raising that clarification that the recommendations in the full document will be coming in the coming days, like, this week, but they don't need to happen tomorrow. What's most important for tomorrow with the county council is that we go over these amendments so that they can then, that they are formally filed with them, and then they are obligated to move them on. And the auditor will receive them directly from us at the same time, as previous charter review commissions have done. So the auditor will have them at the same time tomorrow. But the formal filing for the amendments will take place in the morning at the county council chambers or virtually. Bob?
The community values recommendation depends upon the passage of the community of the introductory section in the November ballot. So logically, assuming that we stay open for business until after the November election, that should be presented at that time if it passes and not if it doesn't. If we're not going to do it that way, I suppose it could be presented to the council if there was some additional don't use this or this depends upon the passage of, because otherwise it makes no sense. We're asking them to use the community values section and it doesn't get passed.
So there's a motion and a second on the table. We're technically under discussion. The motion is
sorry.
to move. No, that's okay. That's okay. All of this is related. So the motion is to move initiative and referendum to the 2022 ballot from the 2021 ballot. And I heard Patty, where you're the sense I got from you is you were saying you didn't feel that was necessary. So speaking in opposition to the motion on the table, is there other discussion on the motion on the table? Dave, please. And then, okay, here we go. Dave, and then Sharon, and then David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have fairly strong opposition to this motion. I think that one thing, what we're trying to do with initiatives here and referendum is to empower voters, give them more power at the ballot box. And this is, we're hoping to inspire voters to do more initiatives in direct democracy. This can affect what is on the 2022 ballot. If this passes in 2021, there might be more initiatives, very likely could be more initiatives on the 2022 ballot. And I think that is a productive thing and good for the voters of San Juan County. And I think that this is a very important thing. I think the crippling effect of the financial limitations clause in the charter is what's really keeping initiatives off of the ballot or voters getting them passed or having them preemptively pulled from the ballot. So I think this is an essential legislation, and I really encourage rejection of this motion. Thank you.
Okay, Sharon.
Yeah, I would be okay with it, but I really want to adhere to the feelings of the people that worked on these. Thank you.
So that's you're saying you're speaking in opposition to the motion.
If that's what the people on the initiative and referendum committee want, yes.
Okay, so I've got David Dellendorf and then Bob again, if no one else.
Yeah, I agree with Patty and Dave. That's a very important amendment, and it can have an impact in the immediate future with regard to any subject that anybody would want to put on an initiative or referendum sign up sheet. If anything should go to the second batch, I would say it's term limits. Term limits has one and only one result or implication, and that is Jamie Stevens. That's it, nothing else. Initiatives and referendums have everything to do with everything. It could be brought up, but the term limits, if it goes on the ballot the second 2022 and is approved, the only difference would be that Jamie Stevens gets another possibility of another term, and I don't think that's a good reason to put the initiatives and referendums on second batch instead of term limits. So I would vote against moving it to the second ballot.
Okay, I've got, Bob, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go to Liz. You've already gone once, so I'm gonna come back to you as the creator of the motion. So I've got Liz and then Kyle and then Bob.
I had just hoped for more discussion like this before there was a motion on which one. I wanted to hear the pros and cons of hearing about term limit. And so I agree with Dave in terms of the importance of the initiatives and referendums. And I'm sorry that there's a motion on the table before this discussion occurs.
I'm allowing, as David just brought up, term limits under the same conversation. So I'm allowing the conversation to go a little broader for exactly that reason. So Liz, if you had another subject you wanted to raise at this point, I would consider it under the same motion because the motion would impact that.
Yeah, so I'm not in favor of term limits being pulled off for the very reason that Dave Anderson brought up. So it's either looking at, I'm sorry, I'm not in favor of
initiative.
I'm not in favor of initiatives and referendums being pushed over, as Dave Anderson brought up. So to me, it's a question of term limits or 6 on this ballot. That's the question for me.
So I have Kyle and then Maureen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure I have strong feelings one way or the other, but we haven't for a while as a group talked about the variability. So 2022 as a midterm election may garner greater voter turnout, and there may be an advantage to some of these to wait potentially and see more support or have more voters weigh in and respond, which could benefit either of the two amendments mentioned. So I don't have a specific question for the auditor, but I think that experience plays out in voter turnout historically. So that may be that may relate in this conversation.
Okay. I have Maureen and then Bob.
Before today, we weren't talking about what to pull off of the 5. We were talking about how they all fit and how hard it was to get to the 5. So I think bidding on which amendment should go off is dicey. It's going to be dicey. Today we learned we have to do 3 on justice and equity, and that's just the way it is. The 2. So the point being, term limits is a good sell. It's a very good sell for the community. And again, I'm going to fight for that one, and I'm going to fight for public advocacy because I think we need both of them. But let's just see where this goes.
Bob.
I just wanted to state that after hearing the opinions of my very, and I mean this, esteemed colleagues, it's going to be very difficult for me to vote for my own motion. Okay.
You want to withdraw?
I mean that. Well, I haven't heard much support for it, so I'm willing to withdraw the motion. Yeah.
Okay.
I second your withdrawal.
Well, you.
But no.
I'm having withdrawal. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is no longer a motion on the table. So then what we have before us is that I would be presenting 6 propositions to the county council tomorrow morning. They would be Climate and Environment Commission, initiative and referendum, term limits, justice and equity, which includes 2 different propositions, one on non-discrimination clause and the creation of the Justice and Equity Commission. And then the final piece will be the introduction, which includes the co-saliage acknowledgement, the value statement, and the updated preamble. Bob.
You're going to be asked tomorrow when you state that there are 3 that were not done. You're going to be asked, will they be completed in time for the November 21 ballot? So you have to be prepared to say, no, we're going to be working beyond that deadline.
Well, that deadline is August 3rd.
Yeah.
I'm saying they're still going to ask you, wait and see.
I can handle myself in a public meeting.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to give you advice. You know more
Oh,
about
it's
it than I
okay.
do.
Thank you, Bob. I didn't mean it that way. Thank you. I imagine there's going to be a lot of questions. I've tried to, never go into a meeting you don't know the outcome of. So I try to anticipate the different questions that will be coming at me. I'm also going to ask that when we conclude this meeting, that a couple of you stay on with me to help me with some talking points, because some of these I'm not as familiar with. I mean, I know them, but I want to know from, on initiative and referendum, Patty, I'd love for you to tell me what are the key points that you want me to touch upon on that when I present it to the county council, not now. Because we're already 12 minutes over when we were supposed to conclude. So we have 6 then that I would be presenting to the county council. Would someone like to put a motion on the table that all 6 are going forward? I see Anne Marie Shanks.
Okay.
Okay, so Anne Marie Shanks, I just want to hear you.
So moved.
So you're moving that we present the 6 that I just listed. Dave Anderson seconded.
You got it.
Okay, so any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, some folks who I know are opposed to many of these supported it. I'm kind of worried. What did I mess up?
They're all great folks. That's what that means.
Okay, so the motion carries.
Commissioner Bob and I are pushovers because I seconded
Go ahead.
this motion. No, just kidding.
So that motion carries. So those are the 6 that we are proposing that will be then, these will be on the November ballot of this year. And I want to thank you all for your work. I want to spend just a couple minutes before we conclude on discussing next steps. We are not done with the November 2021 ballot and our work. We will still, actually the ballot piece, we are mostly done. But we still need to do the recommendations and then the full final document. And that full final document needs to be given to the county council, but most importantly, the auditor and the prosecutor in the coming days. And so as Olivia just pointed out to me, Olivia, were you saying that we do not have a meeting scheduled for Wednesday?
I do not believe it's advertised, so I was wondering if we do or not.
Okay, I had planned on us having a meeting Wednesday because that's when we would have to adopt the entire document, which I think is important that we vote upon.
Yeah.
And so, and then Megan, are you still on?
Don't see her. She's muted. Yeah.
I see her. There she is.
Megan? Hey, timeline on.
Point of
Sorry, I'm getting-
clarification. We were on Wednesday. We were adopting.
We've
ones
got a
that
few.
are going to the 2021.
Please, hang on. Please, Megan, can you mute yourself for 1 second? Okay, it might be, yeah. So Anne Marie, what was your point?
We would only be adopting the 2021 measures.
No, yeah, for the charter, yes. But that entire document, it needs to be done. And so my question, and Megan, you can just nod, is do you think there's a chance that you could have that completed by Wednesday afternoon?
I want to say something. Yes, I can, but not necessarily with findings. I am bogged down in the findings and we have work to do tonight. I need folks to turn around any changes that were made tonight, like right now, and give them to me so that you have them for tomorrow morning. And then I can do the master document, but what's gonna get sacrificed is the findings.
Okay, and those findings are critical. And so on Wednesday, we will be reviewing the final recommendations and the master document. And maybe findings, but we'll see, hopefully. So if, as long as Megan's okay with that timeline, I would like to propose that we are meeting Wednesday. If it wasn't advertised, we need to advertise it as a special meeting immediately.
Yeah.
I don't know who can do that. Olivia, can you?
On it right now.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I get a clarification? On Wednesday, are we discussing the final recommendations or the recommendations of our first batch?
On,
Use that word final.
no, no, so it's only what's our first batch, but the full charter document needs to be submitted with that. And then we will come back for a second round. And then we will update that full charter document to reflect those items.
There's nothing final about anything we're doing this week.
Correct.
That's
correct.
correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Good, good, Dave. Good, Dave.
Yes.
Be careful
That's
out there.
clarification.
Yeah, and then Mylene, are you there?
Yes,
Mylene, am I missing anything at this point?
no. Theoretically, you have to give it to, council's not meeting again, are they, before the 3rd?
20th,
Yes.
the 20th of July.
Okay, I thought they canceled that meeting. Okay, so the only, so yeah, as long as you get it to council by the 20th, and I think you're gonna do it tomorrow. It's a good idea to give it to me, but that's not even necessary. As long as you give it to council, they will turn it around and give it to me.
Okay, okay. So David, I see your hand. I had just let me finish with the logistics quickly, if that's okay, David. Olivia, you were saying you can't host on Wednesday?
No, I have a pre-scheduled appointment between 3 and 4 o'clock that I can't cancel, and I'm not sure if Catherine's able to host. So I can attend from 4 to 6:30. I just can't host to get the meeting started on.
I can
I
host
can
it.
help, or Sharon, or I can help.
Sharon or Kyle, I see a lot of hands. Somebody else willing to host?
Sure.
Tony, you'll host?
Yeah, I can host it.
He's
Thank you
great
so
at
much,
it.
Tony. I appreciate that.
Tony, yes.
Tough for me to do that and chair. So Tony will be hosting, and Sharon, you'll take minutes on Wednesday as well. Wonderful. Okay,
Thank
David,
you, Sharon.
you had a question, and then Liz.
Well, I have a comment about the second batch. Unlike the first batch, when we submit the second batch, which we've agreed is our final batch, we go out of business when we present it to the county council. So we cannot do what we're proposing doing now, and that is continuing to work on the language for the next few days. We go out of business when the final recommendations are submitted. So I just recommend that when we do that, when we get to the second batch, that we do cross all the T's, dot all the I's, and do all that work ahead of time. So when we truly present it to the council, that we can step away and not have subsequent work, because we won't be around at that point in time.
Okay, David, thank you. I've got Liz and then Bob, and then Randy, thank you for your comment, because I was going to call clarification on some of this as well. So I'm going to go to Randy after Liz and Bob. So Liz, please.
I was just pointing out Randy's comment, so I withdraw.
Okay, Bob.
First of all, David, we're not done when we present the second batch unless we say, these are our final recommendations. All we have to do is say, here's our second batch, and we're still in business till December 31st if we want to be. We're not done till either December 31st comes up, or we say, this is our final recommendation. Okay.
Agreed.
All right. Okay. The other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to plead with someone, and frequently this person is Olivia, to make it clear to myself and maybe to other people how we can watch the council meeting tomorrow. I have no idea. There was one today, from what I understood, tried to watch it, didn't succeed. So
phone in.
Somebody help me with it. Phone in. Phone where? Phone what?
Go to the agenda.
Already sent out
Bob,
the link of how to get into the meeting.
There's Bob, there's an email you received in your county email from Ingrid that has the link on where to go to.
Thank you. That's all I need. Thank you. No more.
Okay. Okay. So then I saw a couple other hands, but I wanted to call on Randy as well. But Tony and then Liz withdrew. Maureen and Tony, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to help Bob, Commissioner O'Connell, how to deal with the county access tomorrow, but he's got it.
Okay.
Ingrid, email.
Just look for Ingrid's email. If that doesn't work, email Tony and he'll help you out.
Tony.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
And Tony, if you're more familiar with Microsoft Teams, I may call you, because I've participated in Microsoft Teams a lot, but I've never done a deck, which I plan on doing tomorrow.
Right.
So
excuse me, our first meeting, remember?
Yeah, it's easy. It's their first meeting.
To
Maureen,
participate, to participate in
Tony?
the county council meeting, you're better off with Teams because they do stream over YouTube, but it's not interactive.
Right, right. Maureen, did you have a comment before I call on Randy?
No, I'm sorry, I do not.
Okay, Randy, please. Thank you for your comment in the text. I was actually going to ask you exactly that question. Is the full document due now, or is that due at a later time? And so if you could explain that, just the nuts and bolts. You're muted.
Thank you. What is required is that you submit to the council individual propositions. That is why I've framed them as individual propositions, and each one has a concerning language, and it is the exact underlined strikeout version of the textual change to the county charter. Each has one topic, one subject, and each will be voted on separately by the voters. It is not necessary to submit the compilation of all of them together. That will not be printed for the voter pamphlet in a compilation form. It will be eventually, each amendment will be incorporated within the county charter through the code revisor, and it'll be available to everyone. Those that are accepted are included. Those that are rejected are not included. So that's what you have to do for this week. I had also submitted a proposed resolution for you to adopt, demonstrating your work and your vote on individual measures. Whether you choose to act by resolution or not on Wednesday is up to you. I kind of thought that was going to happen today. The last Charter Review Commission chose to act by resolution, and that should be something that you discuss.
Okay, thank you. My feeling for tonight was we were doing by motion the 6 that we already did. I do not, and I've not seen another member put forward another resolution. The resolution that was submitted had some language changes that we would have needed to submit, because that resolution as written would have suggested that was our final submission. And so I do not have a resolution before us tonight. What I have is the motion that we've now passed saying these are the 6 moving forward. And I was planning on presenting a deck that would have those 6 on one page, and then a page for each of them with the language and a brief couple talking points, and then say, thank you so much to the council for accepting these, and that this is our first batch and they should expect additional propositions from us at a later date. Maureen.
Last time, I'm certain Randy's office provided the resolution, but if that's not going to happen, I'm happy to help with that if that's what we're going to do. I know exactly what to do.
Okay, so we can't do it. So Randy's office did submit a draft resolution.
Right. And I have that. I have that.
And I've also prepared a resolution for you in connection with this one, and it has been submitted and shared with all of you. Megan has a copy. If you choose to alter it in any way, you have Megan available to make alterations.
Okay, good. That's even better.
Randy, are you saying we have an updated resolution based on what we've done tonight?
No, the resolution was drafted at a point in time in which you had not taken action on any proposition, and there's just simply a list. And so you would have your list and you would fill that in.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. So we do not have that resolution before us tonight. We will not have it before the meeting tomorrow morning. And so at this point, I am comfortable moving forward with the motion that we've passed to move forward with these 6 propositions to the county council, as was voted upon by a majority of the commission. On Wednesday, what I would like to ask is if Bob and Maureen would work on that resolution, and we can do that as a follow-up, that we would pass the resolution confirming that same action that we've already made, just so that that is there. Megan, sounds like you're off the hook. Oh, and Randy, I just had a clarification that I'd like to ask you. Are you saying then that we are not responsible for compiling the entire full document at all, that will be done by the code advisor and through your office? And what we're doing is just submitting these propositions. We don't have to compile them all into the full document?
No, that's exactly correct. You do not have to compile them into the full document. It's not appropriate to do that, because at this time you are just submitting individual propositions on each of the separate matters.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Megan, you're way better off. Okay, so Megan, what the crunch for you, Megan, will be the recommendations, making sure those are final, and then the findings. Yeah, go ahead, Megan, and then Maureen.
So on the recommendations, people have received those back. I need them to finalize them, or I'm stuck. I think a couple people need to get back to me with some tiny changes on the amendments, and we're good to go. And I'll see what I can do with the findings, but I'm not going to have time for people to review them before tomorrow.
Right.
So
By Wednesday.
Thank you. And we're not going to submit the recommendations tomorrow. We will plan on just doing the amendments tomorrow. The other thing that's important to point out is that under our own charter, we do not need to present in person or virtually to the county council. We can file amendments or recommendations with the county council digitally. We can send an email saying, here's our recommendations. So we do not need to be in front of them again on the 20th. We could simply say, and here's our recommendations to follow on. So I think we're all clear on what Maureen, please.
Just my last thought is, I'm just going to suggest this. We don't need to worry about a resolution this week. I think we should get through all these pieces and organize them, especially the recommendations, which we'll talk about on Wednesday, and we'll work on the resolution for next week. And I think that's it's not such a pressure cooker.
Okay. And I will not be at next week's meeting.
Okay.
So
there you go.
Yeah, and I apologize. I've had something scheduled for a year that I cannot.
All week?
Yeah.
Okay.
If that's the way you want to be, Kevin.
Hey, I already canceled my entire family vacation for this effort. So other folks were telling me they're off in wherever and having a great time and no connection. I didn't do that. So I'm not feeling guilty at all. But here, hang on. Just one more thing before we conclude the meeting tonight. I wanted to talk about next steps generally, and we don't need to conclude this. We can talk about this more on Wednesday, but I do think it's important to raise the point, which is that going forward, we've met this deadline. And so then the idea is that we've got to finalize these next three. We've got to finish the findings, and we've got to finish the recommendations. The recommendations and findings are both timely. They're not as timely. And so the recommendations, there's not a August 3rd deadline on those. And so what I would like to suggest to all of us is that after this week, I don't know if we need to go into crunch time for the recommendations or findings. And so what I was going to suggest is that we meet maybe monthly, or maybe it's every other week, but I don't think we need to do the rat race that we've been doing to meet this deadline over the next, coming weeks or months, depending on how long it takes us to finish our work. And so I just wanted to throw that out and get your thoughts on that. Bob.
Some people, I think maybe Sharon has been working on ranked choice voting, a committee of one. Maybe you could appoint an actual committee with her as the chair to help her out if she needs any help. I don't know if she needs any help or not. We ought to look at each one of the additional things. And also, if we're going to December, or not to December, but if we're going to some point in the future past this election period, we can think about whether there's something we discarded because there were too many items. We could.
Absolutely, Bob. I think that's definitely a discussion point we could have. Liz, did I see your hand? And then Dave, and then David.
I just wanted clarity on how soon are the findings needed?
We should try and submit the findings that go with the ones that we have before August 3rd, I would imagine. I would look to Randy or Mylene for input on that. But the major deadline is that we're doing what we're doing with these propositions, these amendments that we're proposing. Randy or Mylene, do you have a comment on the findings, on the timing of those? The findings that would be associated with the 6 we're submitting tomorrow? Did you understand the question, Randy?
Sorry, can you see me now and hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm with respect to findings, they may inform a document that I am required to produce to the county auditor within a week of August 3, which is referred to as the neutral statement regarding the proposition. I am to form a ballot title and a neutral statement, 2 documents, and we've talked about this before.
Yep.
And there are word limitations on each. To the extent that you have written findings, they might help inform me as to the neutral statement. I do not need them for the ballot title, however.
Okay, thank you. So what I would like to suggest, because we've spent a lot of time on these findings, why don't we try and complete the findings and have them to the prosecutor's office before August 3rd? Is that possible? Maureen, is that a yes? Yeah, okay. Okay, so and then I would like to see the recommendations go, because I believe they're almost completed. I would love it if those were completed even this week. But you guys tell me if that's realistic, and Megan, you tell me if that's realistic. What I would like to see us do is have the findings and the recommendations associated with the 6 amendments we're putting forward, and then all the recommendations that we have concluded, all done this week if possible. And then all we're working on is these other 3, or as Bob suggested, other things may come up. Let's go to Megan first. Megan, what are your thoughts on that?
So the findings issue, I feel like we might need to kind of start over individually with them. I know people have sent me tons of information, but it kind of ended up in different places. And so what I might suggest is that I send out a call one at a time. So for example, for C&E, I want everybody to send me everything you have. Okay. Every fact sheet, like whatever you think that you sent me, send it to me again. And then I can consolidate. Does that sound acceptable to folks? And then I can put together, I wasn't sure if Randy was going to give us a word limit on those. I didn't hear it if he did.
On the findings, I don't think there is necessarily a word limit. We obviously want to make it something that somebody could read and not have it be a book. But Randy, is there a word limit on findings?
Findings do not go to the voters unless they are published by someone else. I don't, okay, the findings are used by the person who's charged with defending your actions, and they may be used by those who are either promoting or going against the measures, but that's what you have. The findings are not, the findings are an optional document provided for under the charter.
Okay, thank you. Bob, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just that Randy's right on there, but there's the other use for findings is to fill out the historical record. When people 10 years from now, as I did, to go back and look at the other things, want to find out what the reasoning was behind passing this, you look at the findings, there they are, sitting right next to the proposition itself, and that's what the history is. Right.
Okay, but I want to conclude with Megan so she's clear on the tasks she has, priority tasks. So first, and Megan, I apologize, but I'm going to ask you to stay on with me when we conclude here for a sec. We've got the 6 we're presenting tomorrow. Findings we will get in before August 3rd to the prosecutor, and we will try and do that sooner. Megan is going to reach out to folks individually for the different subject matters. And so you will get an email and you need to reply to her, even if you've already sent it, send it again and say, here's findings. On recommendations, Megan sent out an email this evening that had the list of recommendations, the language. I need each of you to look at those. If they are totally complete, which they should be, because they've already gone back and forth, I'd like you to email back the subcommittee leads or the lead of one on ranked choice voting. Actually, that's not there. We're not only on, this is just on recommendations, sorry. So on the recommendations, I'd like you to email back to Megan and I and Olivia and say, yes, this is done. And if it's a whole bunch of changes, then I don't want to hear from you. I mean, I'm kidding, but I'm hoping these are actually done already. So, but we just want that confirmation. And then I would compile an email and send those on to the county council, hopefully this week, so that those come up as well. And then what we could do is ask for agenda time, in August, where we can go into the county council after they've already dealt with our amendments and such. And we could have a conversation with them about the recommendations, because I actually think that would be valuable. Some of those recommendations all of them are really important, but some of them would really value from and benefit from having a back and forth with the county council, because we're asking them to take action on something. And I think it'd be important for them to understand why. So does that timeline work? That's good. Okay, Jane. And then
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just regarding the findings, and it's something that I think we discussed in the governance committee when we were finalizing the recommendations. I think the findings are extremely important from the perspective of us having to step back from many proposed amendments and turn them into recommendations. And in the process of having to do that, some recommendations were no longer really legitimate because they really could only be amendments. And we discovered that when we went through all the governance recommendations that used to be amendments. So I think for the future Charter Review Commission, it's really important that we reflect in those findings that there had to be some things were left on the table and not dealt with. And so I think it's important to capture that evolution in our work. Regarding the recommendations, Justice and Equity Subcommittee has 3 that we still need to present to Megan, and one or two, one of them I think is no longer going to be a recommendation because it relates to an amendment and it can't stand as a recommendation. Doesn't work, just like what governance experienced. And then the other 2, only one of them relates to the Justice and Equity Subcommittee amendments. The other relates to personnel system and that section in the charter. So it would be helpful to know. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, so I don't think we have time this evening to go into everybody's recommendations at all. And I'm sorry, but I've probably got another 2 hours work after I hang up with you guys to be prepared for tomorrow. So all I would say is I just want a sense from you guys on what we're doing here. And I think we've got that, which is tomorrow I'm doing the 6. Recommendations will go to the county council later by email, but we will ask for time to discuss those with them. Or we could wait and submit those in August and actually have a discussion at the same time. And maybe that's a better way to do it, actually, thinking out loud. So, but for tomorrow, we'll do the 6th, and then we're meeting Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Okay. Awesome.
Yes.
Okay. I think Sharon.
Yeah, as much as I'd like to end this meeting, it just came up that the findings are not going to be available to the public. I don't really understand that. I think that it's
no, of course they are. Yeah, no,
but they're not going to be. They're not going to be on the ballot. Where are they going to be?
They're Maureen. Maureen, yeah, please respond to that. You're muted.
You're muted.
You're muted, Maureen.
Well, we're missing that.
Still muted.
You're still muted, Maureen. Okay, I can't fix it either.
Okay. Here's what it is. Every single thing has to go online. We have to have and give orders to the county. They can't get rid of what we put forward. It all goes online. And how we're going to refer people from here to ballots and further, read what's online or make it available to them from online. I'd keep folders so that you can access it for citizens that want to know, because that didn't get online. They lost it. And so we had to regroup so we could provide you with some of the findings from the last time. That's important. It's critical. Everything goes on the county website.
Oh, that's right, Mylene. Thank you. The other thing we're going to discuss Wednesday, we need committees. We can appoint committees to write the pro and con statements for the ballot measure. So folks have talked about a minority report. That would be your opportunity to take on that task as well. Many of our amendments, I believe, would not have a member of us. So then it's up to the auditor to find somebody to write a con statement. But the pro and con statement, we can discuss that Wednesday as well. Unless there's something else pressing, I literally have 2 hours work at least after I'm done to put together a deck and everything that's been changed tonight and make sure I've got the right language and I don't present the wrong thing. So I'd really like to try and wind this down. Dave.
Bob O'Connell's comment about December 31st, I think we could have an amazing New Year's Eve party together in person. It'd be pretty
At your
fun.
house, at your house, Dave.
I mean, we adjourn.
I have rescheduled my Mexico trip for December. And so unless you guys are there, which you're not invited, sorry. Okay, so there's been a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I want to thank everybody for their time, and I apologize, but Megan and Olivia, and then Patty, and let me very quickly just so we can stop the